Thank you to whoever left their glasses here. I think we might kind of make it through, sort of. All right, thank you for coming to our early 5:30 part. We like to do this on the first the first council meeting of each month. This is not the formal beginning of the meeting. This is kind of our pre-meeting so that we can give adequate time to people who come to visit us and introduce themselves and want to take photos and all that kind of stuff. So the first thing we have tonight are some proclamations, and we have a proclamation to recognize the month of April as Child Abuse Prevention Month. And do we have Stacy here? I don't want to kill your last name, Stacy.
Mayor, those are the two proclamations.
Oh, there was two. I'm so sorry. I only caught the one. Okay, let me move that one down then too.
If we could do the ones in perpetuity, that would.
All right, no
Thank
problem.
you.
I told you I couldn't see what you were telling me to do. All right, thank you. Okay, so we're going to do first the proclamations that were done in perpetuity last year and maybe the year before. So we had a proclamation in perpetuity last year for declaring that henceforth the month of April will be recognized as National Autism Awareness Month. Having a child, an adult child on that spectrum, I really appreciate this one especially. The early work they do in this area nowadays is just absolutely fantastic. So, second proclamation declaring that henceforth the first full week of April will be recognized as National Public Health Care Week. And I think we all have really appreciated our healthcare workers for the last couple years. So I really appreciate that also. Proclamation declaring that henceforth the 18th day of April will be recognized as Line Worker Appreciation Day. If you had your power knocked out lately, you really appreciate our line workers. They are out there in all kinds of weather and wind and everything out there, keeping our power going. Another proclamation in perpetuity for proclaiming henceforth the last full week of April as Administrative Professionals Week. So if somebody types up your papers, be nice to them, right? All righty, and everything else they do. And a proclamation proclaiming henceforth the first full week of May as Municipal Clerks Week, and that was read into perpetuity also. There is another one that we don't have, but I would like to mention. This is also National Telecommunication Week. To recognize all the people that work in telecommunications with a variety of jobs, but especially those that are the 911 call takers, and really appreciate everything they do and are there for us all hours of the day and night. Okay, so do we have the other people here yet, or are we still waiting on them?
Somebody just came in.
We do have somebody that came in. Okay, and does that cover both of them?
I believe just the first one.
Okay. We have a proclamation to recognize the month of April as Child Abuse Prevention Month, and we have Stacy Quiddick. Close enough?
Close enough.
Okay, Russell and Catania Jones from El Paso County Health. Yes, please.
That happened to me earlier. Oh, that's much better. So I'll start over. Thank you again for having us here, even though Stacy's not here. My name is Catania Jones, and I'm the Director of Children, Youth, and Family Services for El Paso County. And April is Child Abuse Awareness and Prevention Month. So we're here today. It's a part of a national effort to highlight coordinated efforts to reduce child abuse and neglect. We thank all of our many partners in the region that we work with to stop child abuse and neglect, including law enforcement and nonprofits, and of course, all of you. We work closely with families to keep children safe, but we also depend on the community. Anyone can call the state hotline to make a report when someone is concerned about possible abuse or neglect. And that number is 1-844-CO-4-KIDS. And we don't expect callers to know what abuse and neglect look like. They only need to have a concern that something isn't right. Not every report will become a case, but every bit of information can help caseworkers see the bigger picture of what a family may be experiencing. We want families to be safe and healthy. That can mean different kinds of involvement to protect those who are vulnerable. Making a call to the hotline can help connect a family to critical support and resources. Additionally, I brought some pinwheels for you today. For more than a decade, pinwheel gardens have popped up around Colorado, and it's the country's national symbol of a bright and happy childhood that we want for all children. So I have some. If you'd like some, I can leave some. Normally, we have them piled up. Great, thank you. That's all.
Thank you so much for coming tonight.
Absolutely.
This
Thank
is
you.
such a vital issue in our community, but especially right now as families have been in unbelievable stress the last couple of years dealing with kids being home a lot more than they're used to, different situations, and just the stress of what we've been going through. So I will go ahead and read the proclamation in.
Great.
And if you're finished, I just want to make
I'm
sure.
finished, yes.
Does anybody have any questions for before I read the proclamation in? Okay. A proclamation recognizing April as Child Abuse Prevention Month. Whereas finding solutions for child abuse and neglect, a serious problem affecting every segment of our community, requires input and action from everyone because the well-being of our children today will shape the future of Colorado and our community. And whereas childhood trauma can have long-term psychological, emotional, and physical effects that have lasting consequences from victims of abuse and neglect, and whereas all parents and caregivers need support sometimes, and supporting all children and families early is far less costly to society and individuals than healing from trauma. And whereas community leaders, policymakers, and elected officials play a unique role in building a community for kids by understanding the programs and policies that support child maltreatment prevention, listening to parents' needs, and examining community planning through this lens to build healthy communities. And whereas effective prevention efforts succeed because of partnerships created among human service agencies, public health, the district attorney's office, schools, faith and civic organizations, the medical community, law enforcement and first responder agencies, the business community, nonprofits and concerned citizens, and whereas everyone plays a role in preventing child abuse and neglect, helping to build thriving communities so that families and children may also thrive. Now, therefore, the City of Fountain, Colorado hereby proclaims henceforth the month of April as Child Abuse Prevention Month. No matter where you live, everyone has the power to contribute towards a brighter tomorrow for all children. Done this 12th day of April, 2022. Mayor Thompson. Thank you very much. And thank you for
Absolutely.
bringing the pinwheels.
Yes.
Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yes. Probably shouldn't put them out today. They'll be in Kansas by tomorrow night, huh? Yeah. Okay, we do have one more proclamation, and are we just doing that one, Sylvia, or is someone coming for the Purple Up? We're doing it, okay. All righty. I had to look up Purple Up and figure out why they named it that. That was very interesting to read about all the colors of the military going together, making that. Purple Up Day in honor of the month of the military child, April 15th, 2022. Whereas our military families help protect our country's freedoms, and it is important to emphasize and recognize the critical role their dependents play while their parents serve our nation. And whereas the City of Fountain has a commitment to its resident military families, including those connected to the Fort Carson Army Installation, Peterson Air Force Base, and the United States Air Force Academy, Cheyenne Mountain Air Force Station, and Schriever Air Force Base. I'm going to stop here because there's supposed to be space commands now. So Peterson Space Force Command, Cheyenne Space Force Command, and Schriever Space Force Command. And whereas the average military student faces transition challenges more than twice during high school, and most military children will attend 6 to 9 different school systems throughout their lives from kindergarten to 12th grade, And whereas the City of Fountain recognizes that Fountain Fort Carson School District 8 and Widefield School District 3 are committed to easing transitions for children of military families and ensuring that they are afforded the same opportunities for education success as all children in our region and the state of Colorado and are not delayed in achieving their educational goals. And whereas in 1986, former Defense Secretary Caspar Weinberger designated the month of April as the month of the military child to honor and celebrate our military's youngest heroes. And whereas in April 2021, the City of Fountain and other local organizations will underscore the important role of military children in our communities. Now therefore, the City of Fountain henceforth proclaims April 15th as Purple Up Day in honor of the month of the military child, and encourages the City of Fountain, in partnership with military installations and local organizations, to observe the month with appropriate ceremonies and activities that honor, support, and thank our military children for their service. Done this 12th day of April, 2022, Mayor Sharon Thompson. I think that is a fantastic day for all those kids that do a lot of moves in their lives, and we really want to appreciate what they're doing with their families also. All righty. Do any of our military families have anything to say about that? How special it might be to their families, or have their kids being recognized on Purple Up Day? I don't know where to look for buttons anymore. Okay. All right, seeing none. All right. And I believe that brings us to the end of our proclamations. And we have Chief Heber who would like to come up and tell us about some exciting news.
So good evening, everybody, and citizens and City Council, Madam Mayor. Tonight I'm very honored to introduce our interim fire chief who volunteered to relocate from California. Of course, he wanted to leave Colorado, come back to California to come back to Colorado and serve our citizens and lead our fire department for the next several months as we conduct a national search and settle on our full-time chief. Tom is a Marine Corps veteran, so Semper Fi. That's good. That's where he started his career. From there, he joined the DoD Fire Service and served here on Fort Carson. So the strategic importance of that, especially now with all of the things we're doing with Colorado Springs, with our fire service, and some of the challenges we face, is Tom grew up with all the people in the fire service. So him and Chief Royal were on committees together, grew up together. Chief Royal is the chief for CSFD. So Tom served in every job and position while at Fort Carson and retired as the assistant fire chief. From there, he got to California by volunteering to go out there and lead the DoD firefighting force in the Presidio at Monterey. So very prestigious position where Tom got to work with a lot of different higher level DoD policies to include making changes that impacted the entire firefighting service DoD wide. So he's no stranger to hard work or intelligence or drive or energy. Lastly, his last year, he served as the Director of Emergency Services, which is a job I served in Fort Carson in the same capacity. So during that time, and he has shared with me that leading cops was much more intensive than leading firefighters, right, Tom? Right, Todd knows it's true, I know it's true, and now Tom knows it's true too. They caused him a lot of gray hair, but we're very honored to have him back here. His family is from here. His mother has a little ranch out in Payton, so he is Colorado homebound. This is where he wants to be. This is where he wants to plant his flag, and I'd just like to introduce Tom to say a couple of words. Tom.
Thanks, Chris. First of all, I'd like to thank each of you and Scott reaching out for offering me this opportunity. This is a great opportunity, and I'm very honored and privileged to come back here and lead this organization, the ARS Teller organization. And as Chris was speaking, is that I was here at Fort Carson, and I was very involved, not with just Fort Carson, but even here with Fountain. We did some extraordinary things. I was the chairperson for the training association here for El Paso County for all the agencies, and we had the first 3 wildland academies here, and we brought back the Colorado Wildfire Incident Management Academy. What I loved about us doing it as the smaller agencies, we used to only charge $5 a day, and it was every single agency participated, including Fountain. They offered instructors and space for training and stuff like that. That was just one of many. I'd go into the hazmat. I think some of you might remember in 2010 the Noah's Ark. That was a state exercise. I was a controller evaluator on that. So I'm no stranger of networking. So coming back has been very exciting for me, because just in these couple days going over Fountain, talking with those that have been here for quite some time, and even coming back and finding out that we've worked together. And it is, that's overwhelming as well. It's just getting to re-engage those relationships. So I've been very excited with that. The Colorado Springs Fire Chief, him and I went, Randy Royal, we went up through the ranks together. And so I'm very familiar with the faces there. It's I can pick up a phone and they got mentors everywhere that are helping me out and where we're going and stuff. Yes, I did go out to California for a promotion out there, Fire Chief, as Chris was mentioning. And how that happened was, if we all remember the Black Forest Fire, I was on that. I was planning section chief, and my name got out there, and I was recruited to go out to Northern California, which I got to be out there, Wildland Urban Interface Coordinator for 3 counties, San Benito, Monterey, and Santa Cruz counties. So that was pretty exciting. But coming back home, so there's 4 generations of it, and trust me, my mother, if she was here, she'd be said, he needs to be here, right? She has Petra Farms out there, so I got my mother-in-law and Peyton, he was speaking up, but I got my mother, she's got her farm down there and by the Royal Gorge and Highway 50 and Highway 9. She probably would prefer me to go to Canyon, but anyways, thank you very much. I really appreciate it, and I'm going to be doing all I can to keep this organization going forward. And yes, I do aspire to put in for the position when it is flown, and I do pray that at that time that you will choose me, but I will accept whatever is that the decision that the city makes. So I thank you again, and I appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much, and welcome aboard. Does anybody have any questions for our interim chief?
Welcome aboard.
Welcome aboard, and yep, I bet your mom's real happy that you're just a bit closer here, an hour away instead of like 18 hours away, so. Thank you. All righty, so it is not quite 6 p.m., so we are going to take a 10-minute adjournment until 6 o'clock when it's time for the meeting to formally begin. Thank you.
Sylvia, can you hear me?
All right, good evening. It is 6 o'clock. I'm going to go ahead and call to order the City Council meeting for April 12th, 2022. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you very much. City Clerk, roll call, please.
Mayor Thompson.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Estes.
Here.
Councilmember Hinton.
Here.
Councilmember Corey.
Here.
Councilmember Rick.
Here.
Councilmember Applegate.
Here.
Councilmember Duncan.
Present.
All 7 members.
All right, thank you very much. Councilmember Rick is on virtually, so he will be responding to the staff at the back, and they'll let me know if he has his hand raised or wants or comment or something. So, all righty, we have 2 presentations tonight. We have an update from the Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments. Mr. Gunning, thank you for being here tonight. Mr. Gunning, the Executive Director of Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments. It does a lot for us.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. Appreciate the opportunity to take just a couple of minutes to give you a brief update on what we're up to at PPACG. I think most of you are pretty familiar with what we do. You're well represented. Mayor Thompson is our vice mayor on our board, and I'll talk about our board membership here in just a moment. Councilmember Duncan and other council members I know have been involved as well as ex officio or as alternate members as well. So with that, we'll just jump right to it. But if you have any questions while I'm going along, feel free to stop me. I tend to talk a little bit on the fast side. Moving slide, should I do that here? Where you have a remote?
I can control that for you.
Okay, next slide, please. Thank you. So just a little bit about who we are as the Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments. We're one of 14 COGs, or regional planning agencies, across the state of Colorado, and we really work on issues that cross jurisdictional boundaries. Okay, that's really our main focus. Next slide, please. These are the members of our organization. We cover a 3-county area, El Paso, Teller, and Park counties, and the 13 cities and towns within those counties. Mentioned a little bit about our board leadership. Mayor Thompson's our vice chair. Our chair this year, and for the past 2 years, has been Commissioner Stan Vanderwerf of El Paso County. And our overall governing board is made up of elected officials from all these jurisdictions that comprise PPACG. So it's 20 members, 20 elected officials that are our governing board. Everything we do is also informed by a bunch of committees that we have as well, and we can answer questions about committees and vacancies and such like that if you want to get more involved in some of the committee work that we have at PPACG. But I think you're pretty well represented on our Citizens Advisory Committee and some of the other technical committees that we have already. Next slide, please. Not going to spend too much time on this, but everything that we do is really driven by a strategic plan that our board adopted in 2018, I think was my first year here. And then we did a mini update about 1.5 years ago. So this really provides the foundation of all the work that we do within our organization. Some of the main themes that really came out of that strategic planning process are that we're a convening body, information sharing, and advocacy and collaboration. That really drives everything that we work on as an organization. And what I'm going to do is just touch on the main program areas that we have within PPACG: aging, environmental planning, military planning, and then I'll finish up with transportation planning. And then actually maybe a couple of comments about legislative advocacy as well, because we're pretty involved in that space, where your mayor is one of our co-chairs of our legislative committee. Next slide. So starting with aging, we serve as what's called the Area Agency on Aging for the region. The main goal there within the AAA is to help seniors remain as independent as possible within their homes and within their communities. So it really drives everything we do as far as the services that we provide. Next slide. Not going to dig into these in great detail, but these are sort of the main programs that we provide within our organization. Senior information, insurance and information around Medicare needs that seniors have. We run a family caregiver support center for family members, or for those of us that are taking care of senior family members within our families or within our neighborhoods, and we're not trained to be able to provide that kind of service. So we provide some support around those needs. We have an ombudsman office, which helps seniors in long-term care facilities and deal with some of the challenges in those environments. And then a lot of work around information and assistance and getting information out to our senior community. So these are services that we provide in-house. Then we also contract with usually about 18 or so service providers across the region. And for our part of the region here, that's the Fountain Valley Senior Center, where we're a strong supporter and provide financial support to their operations and the great work that Jolene Helsman does in that environment. So we help fund mobility needs and meal delivery and things of that nature, a whole variety of other services. Next slide. And just real briefly, some of the key priorities that we've been focused on for this year. We're hopefully at the tail end of the pandemic and have that finally in our rear view mirror. But we did receive some ARPA dollars through one of the bills that was passed by Congress. We're going through a planning process right now internally. Then we're going to bring this to our board, where we got about $1.5 to $2 million roughly of ARPA money, where we can use that to help pay for some of the critical senior needs that we have in our community, really help with some capacity building. We learned a lot in the pandemic with our senior population, especially with some of the challenges that they face around social isolation, access to services, basic services like food and healthcare and transportation and things like that. So we're going through a planning process to really identify how to use those funds effectively and really build some capacity across the region. Senior affordable housing has been a key priority, transportation and mobility coordination. And I mentioned a little bit about long-term care needs already with seniors that are in assisted living facilities. We've been really focused on how to help our seniors deal with the isolation and some of the neglect that we see in some of our senior communities across the region. Any questions on AAA related stuff before I move on? Okay, next slide, please. Shifting gears into environmental quality, environmental planning, which is really focused on two main areas. We work in the water quality space across the region, and then also in air quality within the urbanized area, within kind of the urban footprint within El Paso County. Next slide. Just a couple words about each of these. First on water quality, before I say a few words about air quality. The main thing around water quality is just that we are going to miss Michael Fink, your water resources manager, in a big way. I had a chance to chat with Mike in the lobby here, and he's been just a huge advocate for our water quality work that we do across the region. And he's been a huge contributor to our water quality management committee. So really sad to see Mike go, but super happy for him. I did want to say just a couple of words about air quality. We're responsible to track how we're doing as far as federal air quality standards around 6 main pollutants that are regulated by EPA. We're good with 5 of them, but one of them we're right on the edge and actually not technically meeting the federal standards for ozone or ground level ozone. We're not in what's called non-attainment yet with EPA. That would sort of be the next step if we kind of continue on the same track that we're on. The Denver region and to the north up in Weld and Larimer counties, they're already in what's called non-attainment, and they have been for a long time. So we're hoping to really avoid that designation. So much more to come on that. It's important not just because it has economic impacts if we end up in non-attainment, but it's important from a public health standpoint. Ground level ozone causes problems with those with underlying health conditions and that don't have full lung capacity, our very elderly residents and very young children. So it's a serious issue. You're going to see a lot more about it. We actually have a proclamation in front of our board at tomorrow morning's meeting to pass a resolution recognizing the first week in May as Air Quality Awareness Week. And we're really trying to put the word out around what we can do as far as our work within different communities to really drive down our ozone levels. It's a complicated pollutant that comes from a lot of different sources. There are some little things that we can all do by reducing travel where it makes sense, reducing use of lawn equipment on certain hot and dry summer days, things like that. So you're going to hear a lot more about that in the coming weeks. Next slide. I think we shift into military planning, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but we have what's called a military planning program where we coordinate our work around our main military installations in the community. We try to make sure that we're not making bad decisions as a community that impact our installations. One of the really big things we're working on in that space is wildfire mitigation, really trying to make sure we can get in front of mitigation needs around our installations. We've been working closely with USAFA, the Air Force Academy, had a great meeting yesterday with folks at Cheyenne Mountain to look at mitigation needs that they have. We're going to do the same thing with Fort Carson. So one space we're really looking at getting more involved with is coordination around wildfire mitigation. So more to come on that as well. And then the final area I think I was going to touch on is transportation. And that's a kind of a big program that we operate within PPACG. Within what's called the urbanized area of our region, and Fountain is part of that urbanized area, we have to coordinate our transportation planning needs, which means we have to come up with a long-range transportation plan. One that we're working on right now is going to go out to the year 2050. So we have to see how we're going to move around people and goods in the year 2050 while meeting a bunch of federal requirements. And those involve things like making sure we've got a fiscal constraint in our plan. We can't plan for more improvements than we can actually afford to build over that time frame. So by the year 2050, a lot of the demographic experts and economists and others say that that's when we're going to hit the 1 million population mark in El Paso County. So we got to figure out how we're going to move around 1 million people and all the goods and services that come with that, safely and efficiently and in a way that drives down congestion ideally and meets our air quality challenges long term. And it is also a plan that we can actually afford to build and maintain and operate. So you're going to see a lot about that here in the coming months, and actually for the next 2 years. It's going to take about a 2-year planning process until we get to adoption of our plan. Let's jump ahead a couple of slides. Kind of talked about the military work already. Next one after this. Okay, perfect. So I was talking about the long-range transportation plan. They'll go out to the year 2050, kind of a big thing that we're working on right now. One additional requirement that just came down the pike last year that we now have to deal with as well is the state of Colorado adopted new greenhouse gas emissions reduction requirements. So we now have to look at how we're going to reduce carbon emissions in the transportation sector in our transportation plan. So a little bit of a delicate balancing act that we're going to have to go through to identify how we're going to be able to reduce emissions with a growing population and a growing economy. So much more to come on that as well. Just wanted to mention briefly, we haven't done a ton with our traffic safety program, but we just recently, about 1.5 years ago, transitioned a program called Drive Smart Colorado, and I know your police chief has been involved in that effort. It's been a pretty robust traffic education and driver awareness campaign to let people know that, hey, we need to drive more safely out on the streets and not drive through red lights and put down our smartphones when we're driving and things like that. Drive Smart was about to fold up about 1.5 years ago with the retirement of their long-term executive director. We realized that our crash rates, our serious and fatal crash rates in our region are horrible, and they're going in the wrong direction. So we didn't want to see them close up shop, so we folded them into PPACG. So we'll be providing support for Drive Smart and really starting to get the word out around traffic safety and what we can do to sort of bend the curve on our really bad crash rates that we have. So you'll hear a lot more about that in the coming months and years as well. And then finally, we're digging into the federal infrastructure bill that was passed back in November by Congress. A lot of opportunities for funding for a lot of different transportation projects and other projects like broadband and electric vehicles and a whole host of other opportunities. Okay, next slide. And you may have this in your packet. I wasn't going to go through this, but these are just various projects that we've been able to fund through our PPACG funding process with our long-range plan and our TIP. It's our Transportation Improvement Program for the region, which is basically like a CIP for transportation projects. Next slide. One other thing that we do within the transportation space is we coordinate the PPRTA, or the Pikes Peak Rural Transportation Authority. It includes 6 jurisdictions. We just had the town of Calhoun join last year. You're going to see a lot about this because we're going out to the voters in November of this year to extend a portion of the PPRTA sales tax for another 10 years for capital projects, major roadway projects that'll be on the ballot in November. A portion of that 1 cent sales tax stays in place for maintenance and transit service, but the capital portion for major roadway projects needs to be renewed every 10 years. So we're going to be going out to the voters in in November. We're always open to having conversations with any other jurisdictions that want to join the PPRTA. One thing I'll mention before I move on from this is that I alluded to the long-range transportation plan we put together and the TIP, or the CIP for transportation projects for PPACG. The dollar amount in that TIP usually is around $15 million per year. By comparison, on the PPRTA side, we're generating close to about $150 million a year that is invested back into our regional transportation network. So I bring that up just to really amplify the impact that it has, and I really don't know where we would be as a community, as a region, if you took that out of the equation. Obviously, it's a game changer as far as our regional mobility. Next slide. And then finally, our board has been really super active on legislative advocacy, and your mayor can speak better to this than I can probably, or Jessica McMullen, our policy communications manager. But we have a very active subcommittee of our board that meets every Monday, that digs into state legislative bills that have been dropped and what our positions might be at PPACG, whether it's support or oppose or monitor. Not going to go through these in detail, but you can see what our themes are, overarching themes, and then 2022 themes that we've had. On the bottom left are the three major key themes that we've kind of been keeping on our radar around affordable senior housing, wildfire mitigation, and finding some funding support for the greenhouse gas emissions rulemaking effort that went through last year. But really glad to see our active involvement with our board members in that effort. They work closely with our lobbyists and really roll up their sleeves during a really busy legislative session and trying to figure out how we can protect our needs here in our region and not see additional unfunded mandates come down from Denver. So I think that's it. I think the last slide just sort of is a closing contact info slide, but covered a lot of ground. Happy to answer any questions that you may have or hear other needs that that you all have in mind.
So this may be kind of a trick question, but off the top of your head, PPACG does quite a lot for us. In fact, all the construction y'all got to drive through down tonight is a project that was, PPACG helped us fund for getting the access to the bases and getting I-25 widened some. There was a statistics, and maybe you or Scott noticed, for every dollar we invest through our membership in PPACG, of which Judy Christian, from the mayor, when she was mayor of Fountain, was one of the people that helped form PPACG, and was very, very active on it at the beginning of it when they used to meet upstairs because they were so small in the little tiny boardroom now.
We've grown a little bit.
Yeah, grown a little bit. Yeah, but for every dollar we put into PPACG, we estimate we get how much back? Okay. Oh, we did have that off the top of our heads. It's at least like $10 for every dollar we put in. Does that sound about right?
I wouldn't be surprised, and it's probably higher than that. Between AAA funding that flows back to other agencies like Fountain Valley Senior Center, and then transportation dollars, and then other stuff that's hard to put a dollar value to, like the military planning work we do around Fort Carson and such. That sounds about right, but we should probably update those numbers. I appreciate the prompting on that, yeah.
Yeah, because it's very well worth organization being part of, and it's fantastic to be able to work regionally on projects and work together with what needs to get done. So, and PPACG is also, we're pushing through them, once they get done with this, for working on widening Highway 115. That study has started, and so if you drive that and hear about all the accidents over there, that'll also help on the other side of Fort Carson with some military access over the next few years, and a huge safety program over there that needs to be done. See a question from Mr. Evans over there.
Not a question, but since we've got Andy up here, I'd just like to thank him. If you could, Paul, go back to the slide that showed the grants for transportation that were coming down to Fountain. And I'd just like to let everyone know that Andy came into this position with a background in transportation. I believe it was Arizona, Andy, correct? Mm-hmm. Yep. And he really has focused and really has assisted us down here since he's come into his position. And Brandy sits on on that board or that committee with transportation. So all of those projects up there that you see Fountain, so there's 6 up there. There's somewhere between 7 and 10 million coming back to the city. And with Andy's help and his staff's help and with Brandy's help, she basically is involved with those because what he talked about, those are competitive processes. So she has to be on there using her knowledge, using her contacts, and she is involved with those projects all the way from the PPACG side of the funding all the way through when we get them, the design, the quality control, and the project is finished. So if we didn't have her on those boards and we didn't have Andy and his staff assisting us, that millions and millions of dollars wouldn't be coming back to the city. So I really commend Andy, his staff. He's been tremendous for the city of Fountain.
It runs both ways. I appreciate that, Todd. But you guys have great staff, and you guys are awesome to work with from Brandy and Scott and Todd and Kimberly Bailey. We work closely with her and John Trilch. It's a partnership. Our motto is communities working together, and I think we preach that and practice that pretty much every day.
And when people get frustrated that road work isn't getting done, the project you're seeing done out here at exit 128 probably started 18 years ago as an idea with someone for building a roundabout at the intersection of Charter Oak and South Santa Fe, and has expanded to include the freeways and military access. And so that was one of the first times I'd ever heard of PPACG was in this meeting, and I'm like, okay, who are you, where are you, okay, whatever, And but that's just how long it takes to go from an idea to getting the funding. As you said, we're working on the 2050 plan, and those are ideas we have out there now that hopefully the funding will be there. And so when people get frustrated and say, the city's not getting anything done, we're getting it done now, folks. And it is taken literally about 18 years from idea to breaking on that project to get all the funding and the different phases and the studies and the changes that have happened. So please don't, please be patient. All right, thank you,
Super.
Andy.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Does anyone have any questions for him? I don't know where to look to see. Okay. Did you have a question?
I don't have a question. I just want to say thank you for all of your hard work that you do. It's very much
Thank
appreciated.
you, Councilmember. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, and looks like we have a department update. We are doing these the first meeting of each month, and the department that we are hearing from this month is Tech Services. Lisa Godwin.
Hi, Mayor and Council. Thanks for having me tonight. I want to give an update about what we do in Tech Services, and go ahead and go to the next one, please. So first off, I just wanted to give a little overview about what we do in Tech Services. We work behind the scenes, and it's kind of a black box, and I want to just give a kind of a window into what we do and everything that we do, because we kind of have our fingers in a lot of different pots. First, on the IT side of things, we kind of have it divided up into 4 categories. The first is networking. So it's our connectivity to the internet and to applications. It also includes our firewalls. The other side is our data centers, and that includes our servers for computing, processing, and also for storing data. And then we have applications. So it is the management of the applications, it's the operating systems in which these applications run on, and all the issues that come along with those as well. The last area that we have is people. So we work with people to solve issues with their devices, whether it is their PCs, their phones, support. The other thing that we do a lot is we also work on business processes and how they work within applications and improving them to make the application work better or a business process that works better. Next slide, please. So one thing that was in common with all 4 of these categories is access and security. We have a balancing act that we have to do because they're often in opposition. We have to keep our cybersecurity up, but we also have to have the ability to access, to provide the information, provide access to applications. So it's a delicate balancing act that we have to do every single day. All right, next slide, please. The other side is our GIS department. So I consider our GIS department kind of the data clearinghouse for the city. If data has a spatial component, it will go through this department. They GPS every piece of infrastructure that goes into the ground. They manage all the GIS data. It's any data that has a spatial component, including some data that does not have a spatial component. They make maps and visuals, mapping applications. They also oversee the utilities asset and work order management system. All right, next slide, please. So in our recent accomplishments, so we have a new data center that we've opened at the UOC within the last, I believe it's the last year. It may actually be 2 years. 2 years. Whoa, okay. That 2 years went fast. All right, the other thing is we've had a lot of new application deployment. We now have online services for fire permits, planning applications, and engineering permits. We have e-ticketing in the police department and a new court application. We changed over our Microsoft licenses, so it's easier if someone needs to be remote, they can be remote. And now everyone has a Microsoft Teams licenses. And we just switched all our mobile devices over to a new mobile device manager. We also created a project review board. This is because part of the reason why we did this is we were starting to see an increase of applications. And with that increase of applications, it's the cost. It's not only the cost to implement the application, it's the cost to keep the application running and going, the privilege to use the application. So we have a group of folks that include finance and representatives outside of tech services to review and approve projects that move forward, that have any technical approach, any technical aspect to them. This makes the individual or department that is coming forward asking for something really do their due diligence and thoroughly research their project before they bring it to the board. The other thing that we've done over the last few years is we've improved our cybersecurity posture. We're going out, we're trying to do more education. We are sending out phishing links on a monthly basis, and we went from within, I would say, about 8 months, about 10% of the users clicking on the link to the last one we sent out. It was one person, and as soon as they clicked on the link, we had a phone call saying that they did it, and it was an accident, and it was on their phone, and they knew it was a phishing email. So I think that we are improving every step and every chance that we send out one of these emails. Now, for our current projects, we have a lot on our plate right now. In the future, in the coming months, we're going to move to a new broadband service with Underline, including a new phone service. And so as easy as I would like that to be, to take a plug out of one and put it in the other, there's actually a lot that goes into it behind the scenes that we actually have to change in the background. We're moving forward with a new backup application and storage. So we have GETS and WPS, which is priority phone services for government employees for emergencies. And one of the most visual ones that you guys will see is new AV in this room and several other conference rooms that we have in the city. We're also moving forward, you'll hear about this later on today, with your guys' approval, a new SCADA system, pavement management. We have a new firewall that we have to implement. And then we are also looking into HB 211110 for ADA compliance on websites. And then, can you go ahead and switch to the next slide, please? So one thing I wanted to bring some transparency to is one of our biggest issues is application maintenance, and it's growing every single year. Yearly, we review all our contracts and try to end those that are redundant or no longer in use, and trying to minimize that application maintenance. It's difficult, especially because everything is, we live in a digital world, but the prices of everything is going up. Capital, that's any new project that's coming in that has a technology aspect to it. And the supplies, that is our annual refresh of computers, which we were actually going to change the way that we budget for from here on out. It is going to be, we're going to replace computers by the age of the computer or if there's a problem. All right, next slide, please. Ongoing challenges. Cybersecurity. Had to emphasize that just because there's more threats and vulnerabilities than there ever have been, and it just keeps getting worse. And the way that we mitigate it is education, firewalls, endpoint security, and backups. But it's always going to be an ongoing problem. It's not going to go away. Some other additional challenges that we have is applications. Like I keep saying, the costs keep going up for the privilege to use these applications. Some of the other things is they're not working as advertised. We bring them in, we implement them, and they don't work as they've been sold. But we're to a point where sometimes we cannot change to a different vendor. So we have to modify some of our business practices to fit the application. And then the other thing is sometimes they break. we've got a lot of vulnerabilities that have to be patched, and with each patches, sometimes it works and sometimes it breaks something else. So it's kind of like these ongoing issues that something gets fixed and it may break something else, but we try to keep everything working and running as best as we can. And the last is ongoing challenges is resources. We have an increasing demand on our services. We're a fairly small department. We try to work as hard as we can and support, but sometimes we have to prioritize, and some requests get put to the bottom of the list. And the biggest issue is there's increasing costs for everything. Supply chain, hardware, everything keeps going up. Like everyone has seen, we're seeing the same thing. So that's our biggest challenges, but we try to rise to the occasion. So that's what's going on with tech services. Do you have any questions that you guys would like to ask about our department?
Thank you very much. I really appreciate you taking the time to come in and make it so we can understand it.
Thank
So
you.
thank you very much. And I'll tell you, you guys are lifesavers. I don't know, I'm in there at least once a month with something that didn't want to cooperate. So I really appreciate your department. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you.
And does anybody from council have any questions or comments? Scott?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to, as you can see from this presentation, I just can't tell you how impressed we are, just in general, with everything that goes on with tech services. We got a great team between Lisa and Paul and everyone that they work with and they lead. You can imagine everything we do, this is probably the one area that's changing more than anything. And they have to be really nimble. And they are. And the other thing I really appreciate that you ought to really know is how proactive they are in trying to get ahead of these things, as opposed to, so many organizations that you're all aware of, and we hear about them in the news that get behind and then they get stung. You can't always stay ahead of them, but they try their best to do that. You can see their top 4 things are cybersecurity. That's something they talk about a lot. But I just really appreciate just the tremendous job that the tech services folks do with the limited resources they have. And so just wanted to make sure I mentioned that as well.
Is there anyone from the audience that has any questions for the IT department or anything they're doing? And if you do, please put it into English. All right, no questions from the audience. Thank you. Yes.
Council comments? Just go ahead.
All right, we're on item 4.2, Board, Commissioner, and Committee appointments. We do not have any tonight. Item 5, City Council Agenda Request. City Council shall use this time to request any items for future consideration. We'll start on my left here. Councilmember Corey.
Nothing at this time, Mayor Thompson.
Okay, Councilmember Hinton.
Nothing at this time, Mayor Thompson.
Councilmember Estes. Nothing. Councilmember Applegate.
Nothing right now.
Councilmember Duncan.
I don't have anything.
All right, and online, we have Councilmember Rick.
Have nothing, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. Okay, item 6, public to be heard. Citizens may address the council on items that are not on the agenda. Council may not be able to provide an immediate answer, but will direct staff to follow up. Out of respect for the council and others in attendance, please limit your comments to 3 minutes or less. I do have a couple of cards here. And I have a card here from Maxwell Lamb. And Maxwell, if you would please come forward and introduce yourself, state your name. And you said you'd like to introduce yourself and the Fountain Youth Council. Great. Welcome.
I'm Maxwell Lamb, and I'm a part of the Fountain Youth Council, and I'd just like to talk about that for a little bit. So I am a junior at Fountain Fort Carson High School, and I'm excited to be working with Fountain Youth Council, and I'm excited to help the community and go to the Capitol this April 29th.
Oh, that is fantastic, that you're going to have a good time up there, and I'm sure somebody's got a tour arranged for you. And do we have any other youth council members here that would like to be introduced, or is it just you tonight?
I believe it is just me.
All right. And what are some of your hobbies you like to do in your spare time?
I like to code and do math and read.
Okay, Lisa. There you go, future, we're rounding them up here for you. Well, thank you so much for being part of the Youth Council, and I really appreciate your time you're putting in your community for that. That's fantastic, thank you.
Thank you.
Any council members have any questions or comments for him?
Yeah, just me, man. I really appreciate it. I appreciate your example to the youth and being on the Youth Council. We really need more people like yourself to be able to step up, and because you are the future generation, so I appreciate your time and effort on the Youth Council.
Thank you.
Councilmember Duncan.
Okay, thank you, Max, for coming in and show everybody your nice, that he has on he's dressed in our Fountain Youth Council attire. So if you turn around and show everybody your nice shirt that we have. Look at him, he's gonna get me. He is. So I really enjoy Max coming in, and you know, his parents are very active in bringing him in all the time, and he drives himself also. So in Max, we had a project about things that we liked and did not like, and what we wanted to improve in our community. Do you want to share some of those things that you had introduced to the council?
Yeah, sure. So we were talking about mostly road quality and sidewalk quality in that time, and how it could possibly be improved through methods like that, as well as sometimes park quality. There are certain parks that could possibly be developed more. And there was also the issue of the museum. The museum is slightly underdeveloped and is not open as frequently as some people may want it to be.
Right, thank you, Max. And we have Ms. Tamara Estes, and she is on the board for our Historical Society here in Fountain. And and so you get to meet Max. She's aware of your concerns, so we'll be meeting soon and getting those concerns answered for you. And he has a lot of wonderful ideas. So I don't want to, keep him on display too long. So thank you, Max, and we appreciate it. And we have, we had some other kids that were coming, but things came up, so we appreciate Max and look forward to our trip coming up.
Thank you.
Max, I'd like to give you my business card. If your group has any ideas, I'd be more than happy to have an email from you guys and hear from you. And I know you're in good hands with Councilmember Duncan over there. She'll tell us all your ideas too. So thank you very much. Scott, does he have your card?
No.
Oh, all right. Let's get him some cards. Get some emails going. Yeah. All right.
I just want to say, Max, I really appreciated getting the feedback on the museum. I do sit on there. I'm the vice chair for the museum, the Historical Society, and we know that we're not open, but we have a very small organization, and we're an older population that is manning it. And because of COVID, we have to really watch our employees. And everything's volunteer, and we would love to have you come and volunteer with us. And learn our Fountain history, because it is a vital piece of this community. And we would love to hear your ideas. I look forward to meeting with you. The museum's been around, getting close to 20 years now. I think they started in 2003. And we'd love to hear it, So we have computer issues over there, and we'd love to bring you on board to help us. Thank you.
Good.
Better watch out. You're going to be voluntold for a lot of things if you keep standing up there for much longer. Thank you very much for coming in. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you. Okay, I have one other card from Mr. Al Linder.
Good evening, Mrs. Thompson. Last city council meeting, right after that, I had a bunch of questions and I sent them to my council person, Gordon Rick. At that moment in time, I got a text message, "What are you doing at 1:30 Friday?" And Mr. Gordon Rick came to our house to talk to myself and my family. Terry Wary, the president of Cumberland Green, was there also, and Mr. Rick spent 2 hours of his time answering questions and so forth, and giving me some history of things that I didn't know. And then after that, I had a meeting with Mr. Blankenship, and we had a good talk, and I got all straightened out on that subject. So, Gordon Rick, thank you very much. I forward a text message from Terry Wary, and you got that. And also, Terry Wary at that meeting mentioned the police chief, all the help that he's received for the Cumberland Green people when they need things. So I wanted to bring that up and thank him for doing that, because that's 2 hours out of somebody's time. Really appreciated that. Then, after hearing you with the museum, I've donated a lot. I think you've seen things that I put in there from way back. I have a scale, Glenn Ermel, his parents. This scale was used way back when Countryside wasn't even part of it was there. The majority was all cattle. And that's when Glenn Ermel lived back there and did his cattle business. I have this scale. It's like a triple beam thing, pretty old. And I have it's got to go. So if you would like it, I could give it to you.
I would, we're limited on space, but if I could, give me some measurements and we'll figure it out, because it is a vital piece of this community. Mrs. Ermel was the librarian when I went to elementary school here. So, I love keeping that stuff here.
And if you remember back, I'm sure some of the council people remember where Jimmy Camp Road was just a little bit of a road, and then the Ermel's home was in the middle there. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of history.
They've been here for a very long time.
Yeah.
So, and we
Okay.
like to keep that history here. And so, yeah.
I'll take a picture
Yeah,
of it and I'll send it to
Yeah,
somebody.
and we'll get it, either let me know and we can get the museum open, because I have keys, I can open it any day, and we can get it over there and get you some paperwork, because we'll give, acknowledge that you've donated to us.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lender. Is there anyone in the audience who did not submit a card and would like to say anything tonight? Okay, nobody's jumping up. Nobody's raising hands. Do we have anybody online, IT? You have any comments online?
No comments online, Madam Mayor.
All right, thank you. All right, so we will go on to the next item on the agenda, which is the consent calendar. All items listed under the consent agenda are considered to be routine and will be approved with one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member or citizen so requests, in which case the item may be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately at the discretion of council. So we have items A, B, C, D, E, F, and G on the consent agenda. Was anyone wanting to remove any items? Seeing none, may I have a motion, please? Mayor Pro Tem Estes?
I move to approve consent agenda.
Councilmember Hinton?
I second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Please vote. And just for review, you're going to push yes, no, or abstain on your keypad. We have 6 members voting, so we'll be taking Councilmember Rick's vote by voice.
Councilmember Rick, how do you vote?
Yes.
7 yes, motion carried.
Okay, thank you very much. So since nothing was pulled off of the consent agenda, we have no old business, so we're on to new business. And item A, we're going to skip that because that's consideration of items removed from the consent agenda. The next thing we have is items B, C, D, and E, and I have been asked by staff to read those all in at one, and we're going to do one.
Correct. If you could open all the items for consideration, and then at the end of the presentations and public comment, you would take a separate vote on each item.
Okay. Sylvia, you're going to help me, right? Make sure I do it right.
Yes.
Okay. All righty. So item B, Resolution 22-016, a resolution setting forth findings of fact and conclusions based therein regarding the eligibility for annexation to the City of Fountain of territory known as Singer's Subdivision Addition Annex, generally located south of Fontaine Boulevard, north of Dutch Loop, and hereafter more specifically described in Exhibit A. I am opening a public hearing and first reading of Ordinance 1773, an ordinance annexing to the City of Fountain that area to be known as Singer Subdivision Addition Annexation, generally located south of Fontaine Boulevard and north of Dutch Loop, and hereinafter more specifically described in Exhibit A. I am opening a public hearing and first reading of ordinance number 1774, an ordinance approving a request by HPHR Properties LLC for approval of an overall development plan for the development known as Corvallis Lacey, generally located south of Fontaine Boulevard and north of Dutch Loop, hereafter more specifically described in Exhibit A and Exhibit B. I am opening a public hearing and first reading of Ordinance 1775, an ordinance amending the official zone map of the City of Fountain, Colorado to planned unit development PUD district related to that area to be known as Corvallis Lacey, generally located south of Fontaine Boulevard, north of Dutch Loop, and hereafter more specifically described in Exhibit A and Exhibit B.
Thank you. Good evening, Christy Martinez with the City of Fountain Planning Department. I do appreciate you opening all 4 items as they are all related, and we'll be duplicating some of the information. So the first item was the statutory findings of facts. With every annexation that's being considered by a municipality, there are statutory findings that need to be met. Next slide. The property being considered for annexation tonight is a 22-acre parcel that is located south of Fontaine and north of Dutch Loop, known as the Singer's Subdivision Addition Annexation. Next slide. Staff has reviewed the annexation request against the criteria provided in the statutory requirements and finds that it is eligible for annexation. The property is 100% contiguous to the existing city limits, while the statutory requirements require a minimum of 16.6% of the property perimeter to be contiguous. All notices and publications have been provided, which entails notice to property owners within 400 feet, notice to all taxing entities within a 3-mile radius, and 4 consecutive public notices in the newspaper of general circulation. Therefore, staff would make a recommendation of approval of Resolution 22016 tonight, stating that the proposed annexation does meet all the statutory findings for consideration. Next slide. The next item is to consider the actual annexation of the property. Next slide. And as mentioned previously, it is still the same 22-acre parcel located south of Fontaine, north of Dutch Loop. Next slide. There is 4,000 lineal feet of perimeter of the property, so it's the entire perimeter is existing city limits. There is a 1-foot boundary along the southern boundary that was previously annexed, I believe, in the 70s. So when you do look at maps, it is a very, very fine boundary on that southern boundary to make that basically an enclave of the city limits. Next slide. This shows the proposed annexation highlighted in yellow, and then if you kind of zoomed in a little bit on the lower right-hand corner, it does show the existing city limits and that 1-foot boundary. Next slide. This property is located within the urban growth boundary of the city's comprehensive development plan and is consistent with principles 1, General Management Policy 1.2, and General Management Policy of 1.3, which is to evaluate all of the annexations based upon their fiscal impact of the city, to encourage strategic annexations to ensure logical growth of the city, and that we're not extending city boundaries outside of our ability to serve them. Next slide. The annexation plan of the city of 2007 does identify that all annexations should be 100% property owner generated, or at least signed by all the property owners. And policy number 4 indicates that annexations should be beneficial to the city and provide a logical extension of the city boundaries and our services. Next slide. Staff finds that the area proposed for annexation is located within our urban services and urban growth boundaries. It's also located within our adopted 2022 3-mile plan of the Comprehensive Development Plan and our annexation plan, which was presented before this council a couple of months ago. It is consistent with the applicable state statutes and that all public notice requirements have been provided. Next slide. The annexation request was presented to Planning Commission at their March meeting, at which time there was a favorable recommendation of a 4-0 vote. And tonight, staff would not oppose approval of Ordinance 1773 on first reading, approving the annexation of the Singer subdivision addition. Next slide. The two items next are the overall development plan and the proposed initial zoning of planned unit development. Next slide, and you can skip the next one as well. Again, is currently the 22-acre parcel. It's currently zoned in unincorporated El Paso County as A5 with a commercial airport overlay district. The applicants tonight are proposing an initial zoning of planned unit development. They intend to incorporate this 22-acre parcel into the larger Corvallis development, which was previously presented to this council in, I believe, the third quarter of last year. They will be incorporating this 22-acre parcel into the larger development. They will be tying in all the roadways, the land uses, transitions, open space into it. So it will be developed as a cohesive development, but the only item that can be discussed tonight is the 22-acre parcel. Within the Corvallis-Lacey overall development plan, they are proposing 9.9 acres of single-family residential, which is approximately 99 residential units, and 10 acres of open space. Next slide. Access to this 22-acre parcel will come from an extension of a currently unnamed roadway from Fontaine south through the existing Corvallis development, and then will continue south through this development. There were plans at one point for that unnamed roadway currently to continue south into the Glen at Widefield and tie it into Autumn Glen. However, discussions with El Paso County Department of Transportation's at this time, they didn't want that connection due to the construction of the northern leg of Autumn Glen has not been completed, but they did ask for a stub of the right-of-way. If you go to the next slide. So the highlighted parcel in green at the top of both of those images is the parcel being considered tonight for annexation and development. The current Autumn Glen constructed roadway terminates at the intersection of Wayfair and is only as a platted roadway. So when the Glen at Widefield developed, the El Paso County Department of Transportation did not require the developer at that time to construct Autumn Glen to the southern boundary of the property being discussed tonight, so it's just a platted roadway out there. It's just dirt and not a functional roadway. However, if the county at any point in the future wants to dedicate funding to construct that roadway, then this development is providing a stubbed roadway at the end of their development for that future connection. Next slide. Portions of this property is located within the 100-year floodplain. Those portions of the floodplain are contained within the open space areas and will not be used for any residential development. All residential planned unit development zoned parcels are required to provide a minimum of 25% of the gross acreage for open space. In this case, it's 5.51 acres, and as previously mentioned, there's a proposed 10 acres of open space within this portion of the development. Within the open space, those improvements could be playground equipment, benches, shade structures, fields, et cetera. At this point in the development entitlement phase, the level of detail of what those parks and open space amenities would look like is too high level, but they are proposing to provide various open space and park amenities within the development. This item was presented to the city's park board in March, at which time they did make a favorable recommendation of the park and open space. The city of Fountain would provide, that's okay, you don't need to go back, would provide fire, police services, and electric service to the property. This property is located within the Whitefield Water and Sanitation District, so they will be providing the water and sewer for this development. They have also committed to being able to provide water services to this and have adequate capacity to serve. And then this area is also served by the Black Hills Energy for natural gas. So as you can see, there's the north-south roadway, which would connect to Fontaine further north and would continue south with a cul-de-sac at the end of this development with a future stub section of Autumn Glen with various internal roadways that will connect. On the western side of the boundary, so which is the left-hand side of the screen, is the proposed single-family residential at the 9.9 acres with a density of up to 10 dwelling units an acre, so a maximum of 99 dwelling units. And on the eastern boundary, with the right-hand side of the screen, is their proposed open space, which also has the 100-year floodplain along the far eastern boundary. It's also contiguous to the planned open space within the Corvallis development. So as I mentioned, it's going to tie into and have the cohesive feel. So as you transition through there, you wouldn't know that you're going from one Corvallis development to the Corvallis Lacey. Next slide. This is the zoning exhibit, which is a very simplified document that just shows the current district or current zone district in El Paso County and their proposed planned unit development PUD district within the city. Next slide. This area is planned as single-family residential within the city's comprehensive development plan, and the proposal of their overall development plan is consistent with that future land use plan. Next slide. Staff finds that the overall development plan is consistent with the review criteria outlined in section 1722.030C as in Charlie of the Fountain Municipal Code. And staff finds that the initial zoning request of PUD is also consistent with the review criteria outlined in section 1724.50 of the Fountain Municipal Code. Both of these items were presented to the Planning Commission at their March meeting, at which time there was a 3-to-1 vote for approval. Staff would not object to the approval of Ordinance 1774 for the, on first reading of the Corvallis Lacey Overall Development Plan, or Ordinance 1775 on first reading of the initial zoning to PUD tonight. Are there any questions for staff?
I do have a couple questions. You went through that really, really fast.
I tried to talk slow.
If you could back up maybe a couple of slides to the one where they're showing kind of, one more? Or this one? You have some questions on that? No. It appears to me that there is only one way in and one way out of this small section of town until at some future date, the county decides to develop the street at the south end of the road, so that they come in and then they have to turn around the cul-de-sac and that's it?
No, the arrows that you see on that north-south roadway are identifying future access intersections. To the further north, where it says local residential Rivers Boulevard at the kind of top end of the development, is a major east-west roadway that will be running through the larger Corvallis development, which will have access to Mark Shuffle on the east, and then there's additional access to the north to Fontaine. So when you look at the integrated roadway systems of this parcel with the Corvallis development, there are multiple ways in and out of this 22-acre parcel. But on the specific 22-acre ODP, the local roadway, which will come to the cul-de-sac, would be their quote-unquote major roadway into it. But all of those various arrows that you see along both the western boundary and that internal roadway are identifying future access points.
Okay, I just didn't want to have a problem like we have in the area of town when they
No,
only
there
have
will
one
be
in
multiple ways in and out.
and one out. Okay, then we have to come back and fix it ourselves on our dime later on. Okay, and then I have a question about the park and the open space and all the amenities that go with that. At what phase in the development are those going to go in? I'm just kind of a stickler about some things going in after phase 1 and some after phase 2 and not putting them all off to the end, which.
Sure.
Because that isn't fair to the residents that are investing in the community at the beginning.
So because this ODP for the 22 acres will be integrated into the larger one, there will be a phased development of the open space through the entire development, both this parcel and the other one. As those park and open space plans become more refined in the entitlement process through the preliminary plat and the final plat, that's where the phasing of all of those open spaces and amenities will come in. Staff will work with the applicant and the park board to make sure that all those amenities are phased in so that there are amenities for those residents who move in to the first filings, and then also amenities are provided for the future filings as well.
Thank you, because those kids, as soon as they move in, they need a place to play besides out in the street. All right, thank you. Any questions from any other? Not seeing any questions from anybody else. This is a public hearing.
Correct. And the applicant, Jason Allwine with Matrix Design Group, is also here if there's questions for him.
Okay, great. Come on up.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I'm sorry, I had a question for Christie.
Oh, okay. All righty. Christy, Mr. Rick is online with a
Yes.
question. Go ahead.
Yes, Christie, when Corvallis was overall approved, council
Mr. Rick, could you speak up, please?
Yes, ma'am. When Corvallis was approved, there was some concern about space for grocery store in the area. Has the developer come forward with any other improvements or additional space for commercial?
There's no commercial planned within this Corvallis Lacey parcel, which is the 22 acres being discussed and under consideration tonight. As the developer works through their preliminary plats, which will further refine the commercial and residential areas within their first phase, that will be more detailed, but at this time, there's no commercial within this Corvallis Lacey parcel being discussed tonight.
Thank you.
Any further questions, Mr. Rick?
No, Madam Mayor.
All right, thank you. All right, go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening, Council. Jason Allwine, Matrix Design Group. I do have a presentation. We can skip through several of the slides because a lot of it's repeating. I can kind of hone in on the specifics of the project if that's okay. Go to slide number, keep going, a couple more. This one starts. So as mentioned, this is 22 acres. This is, at the time last year that the original Corvallis came in, this parcel was still under contract and not owned by the developers at that time, so that's why we're coming in as a separate piece to annex, zone it, bring it into the ODP at this time. Had we had it then, we would have done it all in one, but here we are. So as mentioned, it is 22 acres. Christy gave a lot of detail, and thank you for that, on the connection to the roadway. We do have that roadway coming down with a future right-of-way stub. As we go through future phasing and more detailed preliminary planning, the exact dimensions and timing of that right-of-way will become more apparent with the detailed layout. We are proposing the 10 acres on the eastern side of that roadway next to the creek, and on the western side is the proposed residential. With this ODP, we have to identify proposed residential density at 10 Ds per acre. That's consistent with some of the other ODP Corvallis land uses.
I'm sorry, 10 Ds per acre?
10 D per acre. So up to 99 units on this, but please note that 99 is not in addition to the 1180 that was approved with Corvallis. This will be absorbed into that 1180. So as this 22 acres and the 275 come together, we're still capped at 1,180 units. We needed to apply a density range for this in order, so as we move forward with preliminary planning, we had a density that we were approved to use with future residences. So just please note that 1180 is still the cap for this 22 acres and overall. And if we can go to the next slide, you can see how this fits into the context of the overall Lacey parcel. So the 22 acres is kind of the southwestern corner above the words Corvallis Lacey, and how it fits in with the open space context to the east that was approved last year, as well as the major roadways that Christy talked about. So we will have multiple points in and out without that Autumn Glen connection to the south. If that connection to the south does happen, then we have even more traffic flow north and south to get to Fontaine or Mesa Ridge Parkway. So again, with that density cap, 1180, this 22 acres is being folded into that. So we've increased the overall project. I don't want to get too far off the 22 acres, but we've increased the overall acreage to 297, but the density cap remains the same at 1,180. So we're not asking for an additional 100 units on top of that. This just gets folded into that density. I know it's kind of confusing, but hopefully that makes sense. And then next slide, please. And this is just kind of a repeat slide, but talks about the open space. The original Corvallis had roughly 46 acres of open space. This proposed Lacey's bring an additional 10. So collectively, we'll have over 56 acres of open space with this concept plan ODP. As we come in with phasing, with that, we expect additional open space through trail corridors, pocket parks, small neighborhood parks, but that's a more detailed level as we come in with the different filings of the individual takedowns with that. And to Commissioner's Rick question, we still do have, as part of the overall, again, not part of this 22 acres, but the overall context, there is there's a commercial site. We're working with the fire district on their fire safety center location. We have a 12-acre school site to serve this community as well. And happy to take any questions on that.
Does any council members have any questions on his presentation so far?
I just have a comment. I really appreciate you putting that much open space in this amount of property. I think that that's a great bonus here, and I like this flow. So I think that's a great thing to see it not cramming up every 22 acres full of houses.
Thank you.
So,
Okay, anybody else with any other questions on?
I have a question. So you said that school will be incorporated, what grades?
I think it's 12-acre school site that was in conjunction with the school district. I can't speak to whether that's a elementary or K through 8. They asked for 12 acres based on the anticipated density, and so we've identified that 12 acres. That's that kind of bluish parcel that you see kind of south central, and that was shown and approved as part of that ODP last year. Yep.
Okay.
And that would, yeah, so that's not part of tonight's discussion. It's
No,
not
no,
part of the
just
22 acres
that
that we're
22
discussing
acres.
tonight.
Yep.
So,
I just
yeah.
wanted to show the context of how this
Right.
fits into the overall
Right, I
area.
appreciate
Yep.
that, yeah, thank you, yeah. But keep those questions, we'll bring them back then when you bring the big plan, how's that?
Thank you.
Is there any other questions on the 22 acres for tonight from council members? Are there any staff questions or comments at this point? Okay, this is a public hearing, so is there anyone in the public who would like to be heard on this development? Remember, again, we're only talking about the section that's on the far left of this slide that's on the top there with the kind of the yellow and green there. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions. Council, last time for questions? Okay, so Sylvia, we're going to handle these one by one, is that correct? Okay, so we have item 9B. Do I need to read it back into the record again?
No.
Okay, so we're going to be voting first on item 9B, which is Resolution 22-016. Do I have a motion? And not seeing any lights up here. Council, or Member Hinton?
I motion to approve Resolution 22-016.
And Councilmember Applegate?
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Corey, you have your mic on?
No.
Oh.
No, I was, for
Okay.
a second.
All right. Okay, please vote.
Councilmember Rick, how do you vote?
Yes.
7 yes, motion carried.
All right, thank you. We will move on to ordinance 1773, new business 9C. Do I have a motion for ordinance 1773? Councilmember Applegate?
Yeah, I move to approve ordinance 1773 on first reading.
Councilmember Hinton?
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? If not, please vote.
Councilmember Rick, how do you vote?
Yes.
7 yes, motion carried.
Okay, we have ordinance 1775, new business 9. Thank you. I know all the papers going around here, I must have, just 1 second. Thank you. Ordinance 1774, do we have a motion? Councilmember Corey?
Motion to approve ordinance 1774 on first reading.
And we have a second, Councilmember Applegate?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on item 1774? If not, please vote.
Councilmember Rick, how do you vote?
Yes.
7 yes, motion carried.
Okay, thank you. We have one last item. We have ordinance 1775, new business 9E. Do we have a motion on that? Councilmember Estes?
I move to approve ordinance 1775 on first reading.
Do we have a second? Councilmember Applegate?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion on this item? Seeing none, please vote.
Councilmember Rick, how do you vote?
Yes.
7 yes, motion carried.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay. Okay, we're moving on to item F. I am opening a public hearing for Resolution 22-017, a resolution approving an amended and restated service plan for the Ventana Metropolitan District. Ms. Martinez.
Thank you. Good evening. Christy Martinez again with the Planning Department. The item being presented tonight is the amended and restated service plan for the Ventana Metro District. Next slide. The Ventana Metro District was established in 2006 as a Title 32 district. A Title 32 district is referencing the Colorado Revised Statute Title 32, which typically governs the special districts, metro districts throughout the state. In 2006, in February of 2006, the council at that time had approved the initial service plan. The purpose and function of a metro district is to finance public improvements and amenities, so whether that's the roadway construction, the infrastructure construction for water, sewer, streets, parks, recreation, any other amenities in there. Metro districts typically serve as an independent quasi-governmental entity to oversee the financing, construction, and sometimes the ongoing maintenance of some amenities. Most of the time, if they are constructed as public roadways, those roadways are then turned over to the local government for ongoing maintenance. But typically, metro districts do maintain in perpetuity the open space, trails, any type of private amenities that would be of benefit to the residents of that community. Next slide. The Ventana Metro District covers approximately 150 acres. It's located along Old Pueblo Road and R&B Court, so a little bit on the southern side of the community. Within the development, there's a proposed 650 maximum single-family residential units, in addition to a 3.6 acre commercial site, and they also provide a recreation center and an outdoor pool. The Ventana development itself was broken up into two phases, which we call Ventana North, or normally just called Ventana, or the Ventana South. Ventana North started construction, I believe, in 2015, and has constructed the first phase of their open space, which is their recreation center, their outdoor pool, some large open space to the northern end, and a park with multi-purpose fields. And then they have approximately 384 residential lots. Ventana South has just started their construction of their residential units, which will be built out in multiple phases as well. Next slide. The original 2006 service plan had a debt service limit of 25 mils with an operation and maintenance of 10 mils, so the total maximum aggregate that you would see on your property tax bill was not to exceed 50 mils. They have a debt limit of $15 million. The proposed amended and restated service plan being presented tonight is proposing an increase in the debt service to 40 mils, with their operation and maintenance remaining at the 10 and their debt limit remaining at 15 million. As I kind of touched on briefly, the district will be maintaining their two neighborhood parks. One is in the northern boundary, which has their clubhouse, their outdoor pool, multi-purpose fields, and there will be a smaller neighborhood park in the southern portion of Ventana, which will have a half-court basketball court, playground equipment, and multi-purpose fields in addition to other amenities. The district currently maintains the clubhouse and outdoor pool, which is available to both residents and non-residents. There is an annual community center fee for residents of $360. There's also an annual fee for non-residents, so anybody else in the community who is interested in utilizing those facilities do have the option of paying an increased fee for that usage. The district also collects a one-time park fee for all residents within that development of $3,015, which is the equivalent to paying the city park fee, as they did receive park credits back in 2015. The 50 mills for their maximum aggregate, which includes both their debt service and their operation, equates to about $1,200 to $1,600 per year on your property taxes to help fund those improvements that were installed by the developer. Next slide. In 2015 and 2017, the district had issued debt with a total of $4.46 million using bond anticipation notes. There is an anticipation that with the future Ventana South, that additional debt will be issued, but it will not exceed the $11 million. All debt incurred by the district will be required to be discharged no later than 40 years from the date it was first issued. So the first debt that was issued was in 2015, so 40 years from then is 2055. The 2022 amended and restated plan is also proposing an increase in their annual community center fee for their residents from $360 up to a maximum of $540 on an annual basis. There is a stipulation within the service plan that before that can increase, that a minimum of 3 residents must serve on the district board. They currently have a election coming up in May election. For 3 open seats, so that will meet that minimum requirement of having more citizens that live within that district boundaries to be serving and have a say in how that district is run and operated. Within tax year 2021, the district had actually overcollected on some of the operation and maintenance funds, which exceeded the allotted 10 mills on their property taxes. Those excess funds must be refunded by the district within the calendar year of 2022 back to those residents, because the ballot language for their operation and maintenance had a hard cap at that 10 mills. They actually exceeded that in what they had collected, so they have to then refund it. It's very similar to a governmental TABOR refund, where they collected more than what we can keep. Next slide. Staff finds that the amended service plan does comply with the statutory findings of Title 32-1-203. Those 9 or 10 criteria are included within your commentary if you wanted to read in more details what those are. Proper notice was provided by the petitioner. It went to all the governing bodies and special districts that had issued ad valorem taxes within a 3-mile boundary or a 3-mile radius of the district. It was also published within the newspaper of general circulation and to all property owners within the district boundaries. Next slide. That's all right, I can read that one. So the recommendation tonight would be that staff would make a recommendation of conditional approval of Resolution 22017, conditionally approving the amended and restated service plan for the Ventana Metro District, subject to that any property taxes collected by the district for the operation and maintenance purposes during calendar year 2021, which was in excess of the revenue that was produced by that 10 mills, will be refunded by the district within calendar year 2022. City Council also has the option to either just approve it without that condition or to deny the amended and restated service plan tonight.
And if we did it without the condition, what does that mean?
I would have to defer to a legal counsel on what that means, and I'm not even sure Troy would know that, as he's not our special district attorney. But the recommendation of our special district attorney was to ensure that those residents did receive that refund, as they did provide those excess refunds or revenues to the district.
So we really don't have a choice.
Well, you can approve it. I just don't know what happens with that if you do. I don't know how that works. And the district managers agreed to that, and he has a presentation as well.
I understand that, but if you're recommending conditional approval, it is nice to have the information for if we don't recommend it as conditional, what that means, so. Jean can't hear me. Okay, all right.
Can't hear you.
I can hear myself fine.
Politely not interrupt. Can't hear you.
Okay.
I saw the signal, so.
My comment was, if you're going to ask us to approve something conditionally, it would be nice to know what what happens if we don't approve it conditionally, and they don't have that answer for us, so that's okay. That's okay.
Appreciate that.
All right. Okay.
And Kevin Walker with Walker Schooler and Associates, who is the district manager, is also here tonight with a brief presentation and to ask or answer any questions that the council may have regarding the district and the proposed plan.
Okay. Good evening, Mr. Walker. How are you?
Wonderful, thank you.
Haven't seen you in a couple weeks.
Yes, it has been a couple of weeks. Thank you for the opportunity. My name's Kevin Walker. I'm the president of Walker Schooler District Managers, and we are the district manager for the Ventana Metropolitan District. Just to start off with, I would like to tell you that we do agree with the staff's recommendation. So we'll take that piece off the table, and tomorrow we will have our board start the process of returning that over-collected taxes, which is about $35 to $40 per household. So we will do that in the next 30 days. The second thing I'd like to do is to thank Christy for her patience and the staff for their patience. I've been working on this with them for several years, and we've gone through many complications, but she's been very professional and very helpful in getting this to the finish line, so I appreciate that from Christy and her staff. So I will briefly give you some history of this development. The service plan, as Christy outlined, was first adopted in 2006 with the formation of the district. So the service plan, for those of you who are not familiar with service plans, they are basically the charter for a metropolitan district that runs then off of its own board, and the governing body has the authority to establish that service plan and then amend it. And the reason we're here to amend it is that conditions in 2006 were substantially different. The first bond issue was projected to be sold in 2008. We all kind of know what happened in 2008. There wasn't much of a market for houses, nor was there much of a market for bonds. And Challenger Communities purchased the property through one of their subsidiaries in 2014, began development in 2014 and 15. Did some changes to the master plan and the development plan, including the addition of the rec center and pool. And they've continued that sort of community building infrastructure with proposals for an expanded park system in Ventana South, along with an expansion at the rec center for a water park. So they've been working their way through that. They've also made substantial contributions to off-site facilities, including the Indiana Avenue crossing, as well as some off-site funding for water lines. So that's what basically these bond funds will be used for, is to assist Ventana and Challenger to complete the community. So that gives you a quick update as to what a service plan is and the history of this development. And so I'd like to run through the slides real quick to give you an idea where we are and what we're doing. So next slide, please.
Could you hang on one second? Brett?
Oh,
The city
sure.
clerk has her light on. Did you need to say something?
Just real quickly, Madam Mayor, I don't know if you would prefer to call for a recess or just continue. Councilmember Rick has lost internet connection, so he's not currently part of the meeting right now.
If you will bear with us, we'll
Absolutely.
take a 5-minute break and see if we can get him reestablished. So we'll come back at 7:30.
Madam
And that's
Mayor?
8
Oh,
minutes.
wait.
Oh, wait. Is he back?
I've got my connection back.
Hey,
Okay.
voice from the internet.
Well, you know what? Irregardless, we're going to take a little break at 7:30. And or would you rather take it now?
Oh, that's completely up to you.
Okay,
We're
let's take a
fine.
5-minute comfort break. We've been here almost 2 hours, so let's go ahead and take that real quickly.
That's
And I'm
fine.
sorry to interrupt you, and we'll make sure. All right, thank you.
Excuse me, everybody, we still are in a public hearing. Although we are in recess, the public hearing is still open. Thank you.
And I'm trying to get them to May in September.
I just want to iterate what the city clerk said. This is still a public hearing. We ask that you keep your comments to yourself and quietly, please.
Okay, everybody seems to be back. Thank you for allowing us to take that quick break. And we'll continue on with your presentation, please. And like the city clerk says, the public hearing is still open. So.
Kevin Walker, I'm district manager for Ventana. Next slide.
I don't think your mic is on. There you go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good. I didn't even have to do anything. We might have been here another 10 minutes. So this gives you a general idea of where Ventana is and encompasses the entire boundary there that you can see. Ventana North, which is completely developed, 384 units, a 14-acre park, several thousand feet of trails, and a rec center and a pool. Next slide. Again, how Ventana sits in the community. Next slide. And this gives you an idea of some of the amenities that have been built in Ventana. And many of them have been built up front. And so, as you discussed earlier in one of your comments, that's one of the features of this that is helpful when you have district financing to be able to do that. Next slide. So we are asking for a change to update the the district, or the service plan of the district. But some of the things that are important is that we are not changing. We have been having a fee for the district at $30 a month and a trash service fee of $15 a month. We have no plans to increase that. There's no increase in the authorized debt limit of $15 million. And we are not proposing an increase in the debt or operations, the total mill levy of 50 mills. So that's been your standard in the city of Fountain, and we are not changing any of that. Next slide. What we are doing is trying to update the service plan in order to match what has actually occurred on the ground and will occur in the future. And that is to allow the district board to set a fee, because the old plan did not have that option, and to operate the existing park, open space, and community center, which again also was not a function of the district in the 2006 service plan. What we're proposing is to give a resident board, a board that is a majority of residents, the option or the opportunity to raise the fee if they think that they need to in order to maintain the rec center and the parks and the open space in the proper way. They don't have to raise the fee, but this gives them the option to do that. And it also provides the ability and the power to fund covenant enforcement and to coordinate trash pickup. I know that you all are talking a little bit about potentially doing something similar to that. Okay, never more. All right, well, I won't mention that anymore then. Oops, sorry. Bringing up a bad subject. Okay, next slide. And most importantly, this change will allow the district to issue bonds to replace some of the bonds and the debt that was established. We have one that was paid, some monies were paid to the city in 2007 that are being paid at an 8% interest rate since then, and that agreement compounds interest. So it's now over $1 million, and every day goes up. And so we'd like to replace that with some more or a less interest rate. We also have, and so that'll save the district millions of dollars over the life of those bonds. This also allowed developer to contribute to important site and community enhancing improvements. We've talked about some of those already, the rec center, more to come. And also for off-site water infrastructure and the Indiana Railroad crossing improvement. So that'll give us the opportunity to do that as well. And next slide is, I think, questions, and I'll answer any questions.
Councilmember Applegate.
Yeah, you said a little bit ago that you're going to have 3 people from residents elected to the Metro Board.
I can't say that for sure. There are 3 that are on the ballot, and there are 2 of the developer representatives on the ballot, and that election occurs on May 3rd, so I don't want to presuppose what might happen.
I was just curious. I understand why you're doing what you're doing, but wouldn't it have been more appropriate to wait till you have some civilian some resident representation before you did the mill levy? It's not that big, but it would have looked a little better if they were on there.
I'm not sure. We're not doing anything to the interest rate or to the mill levies. We're just trying to clean up something that we've been actually operating under for the last 4 years. So
you're increasing by 15 mil from 35 to 50.
Oh, you mean, well, we're not increasing the maximum, so it is true.
Not the maximum, but you're increasing what they would pay in mill levies. And wouldn't it be more appropriate if you had some of the residents on there who would probably approve, once you explained it to them, but it would sure look better?
That's certainly in your perspective, that I can understand that. That mill levy has been assessed over the last 4 years already, so it's not a change in the mill levy. We're not proposing any change to what we've already been certifying.
Sure you are. You're going from 35.
No, the interest rate, or the mill levy in 2006 was projected to be 25 mills for debt service, but it was a maximum of 50 mills. And since that time, Obviously, conditions have changed, and the board in the last 4 years has established the 40 mills and the 10 mills as their base for operations. So we're not changing anything from the current operations. We are updating the master plan to allow that. Or, I'm sorry, the service plan.
Could we pull the slide up that we're?
No, we
that
won't
Ms.
be
Martinez-
increasing the taxes on any of the residents from last year to this year.
What were they paying last year?
They were paying 40 mills and 10 mills.
They aren't. Then what are you doing here? I thought you're going to 50 on this one, right?
No, we're not trying to increase the maximum mill levy.
No,
We're
you're
trying-
going to the max on this, what you're asking us, right? In that.
We've already
Richard,
been
we're
at the
gonna try
max
to-
in our
Councilmember
operations
Applegate,
and
we're
our
gonna
debt
get the
service.
slide- We're going to get the slide pulled up where I think your questions are coming from Ms. Martinez's presentation.
Good.
That might help.
Excellent.
Okay. Is that the slide you were referring to?
Yeah.
Okay.
The debt service has been 25 mil, now it's going to be 40 for the debt service mills. That's an increase.
That is an increase,
That's what
but
I just said.
it's an increase in what the service plan projected, but the service plan is out of date, and that's why we're trying to modify the service
I
plan.
understand that.
Okay.
I'm just saying you're doing it without any residents on the board.
We've
That's what
had
I
a
was
resident
saying.
on the board for 4
It would
years.
be nice to have some on there so they have a voice
Okay.
also.
That's true. We've talked about this with the residents. We've held numerous meetings with the residents, had a 2-hour session last year on debt financing and service plans, and so we've made extra efforts to try and get that accomplished. So, but I understand your point.
Are you finished?
Yeah, it is. what it
Okay, I
is.
just wanted to make sure you were done. Okay, Councilmember Estes?
As long as we have this slide up. On the bottom, it says a one-time park permit fee. I have a question, is that just when the first house is sold, or if somebody sells it again, do you charge that fee again?
No, it's just the first time, so the
Okay,
builder pays that fee.
That's what I want to know. Thank you.
That's right.
Mr. Applegate, did you have another question? Okay, all righty. Any other council members have questions? Okay, I have some questions. So how many members are on your board altogether?
5.
There's 5, okay. You have a 5-member board, and right now, for the last couple of years, you've had at least one resident on there.
Last 4 years, right.
Last 4 years. I believe it's Mrs. Hersberg.
That's currently, there was somebody before her.
Okay, and so you're changing that from, to be 3, so 3 out of the 5 would be, hopefully,
No.
if the election.
Well, the voters will have the opportunity to change that. They have to vote. We're going through the vote now. I don't have the authority, nor does the board have the authority.
So is the vote to change so that there can be 3 residents on the board? And then
Three
you have-
residents are candidates for the board. It's most likely that they will be elected.
Okay, all right, good,
Yeah.
good, all right, thank you. All righty, and then on the background information we were given, it said, the district now provides services for the maintenance of the clubhouse and pool that were not originally contemplated when it was necessitating the need. So it kind of makes it sound like those weren't in the plan, even though they were in the ODP to be built. It wasn't necessarily in the plan to service them. Am I interpreting that wrong?
No, they weren't it's my understanding that they were not in the original development plan. So when Challenger purchased the property and modified the plans, they added the rec center. Is that correct?
That's correct. The original overall development plan for Ventana was approved, I want to say, in 2005,
Okay.
which did not contemplate a recreation center with a pool. They then subsequently came back, I believe, in 2014 to amend that to include additional amenities, which would include the recreation center and the pool.
Okay, that makes sense.
And we
now.
didn't
Okay.
amend, but they didn't amend the service plan at that time, so.
All right, thank you, that makes sense now. Okay. And then it says that non-residents of Ventana can purchase a pass to use the recreation facilities?
Yes, ma'am.
What is the cost of that pass for them
It's
to do that?
$600 annually.
$600 a year?
Yeah.
Okay, $600 a year, and that includes unlimited use of the pool, the weight room that's in there?
That's right, the rec center.
Community
All of the
rooms?
rec center facilities.
Okay, all right, and that's $600 a year. Alrighty, and then have you had very many purchase that?
We've had one family purchase that prior to the pandemic, and then that family moved into Ventana.
Oh, okay, there you buy a house and there you go. They're already using it. Okay, and you wanted to raise, I don't know where this slide is, how much you wanted to raise the fees again for the pool and the various.
Okay, so what we're proposing is not to raise the fees. In fact, what we're doing is restricting the developer board from being able to raise the fees. But we're giving the option to the residential board, or the residence board, to increase the fees in the future if they feel like they need to do that in order to accommodate whatever maintenance they think needs to be done for the community.
Okay. Right.
So you're not going to increase the fees right now, you're just having that option available
That's
if
right.
you need it?
That's right.
Okay.
So if you did raise the fee up to $540, which was the suggested plan in our write-up, the non-resident fee would still stay at $600?
We look at that every year, so we'd have to look at that each year and try to figure that out. What we're basically saying is, if the residents are paying $360 a year already, and they're paying taxes on top of that, that some portion of that, the non-resident fee should at least reflect the fact that those residents are paying that fee, that tax on top of their regular fee.
Okay. When I came to a town hall meeting over there 2 or 3 years ago now, probably, and you were there, I believe.
I was there.
Some of the residents had said they wanted, when you did the second phase, they really wanted another pool because they felt like the pool that was there is too small. And instead of providing that, you're providing a splash pad, is that it?
That's right. And that's not us that we're providing, it's the developer. The district is just basically the maintenance arm.
Okay, yeah. Okay, but I appreciate that because maybe a lot of kids will enjoy that.
Yeah.
And that would be something, if somebody paid that $600 fee, they would be able to
Absolutely.
enjoy that too. They're not going to divide it between north and
No.
south. Okay,
That'll be part of the rec center. We'll just modify the fencing around that and make sure that we manage it as one unit.
okay. All right, Councilmember Duncan.
I don't know if it's in here or not, I don't see it, but what is the capacity of the pool?
Well, it depends on how you look at it. It's been calculated anywhere from 125 to 225.
Okay.
People?
Yes.
In that pool?
You've used the word
I'm
small.
not a professional, I am not a professional pool operator, and I was not prepared for that question, but I do remember, that's right, we tried to figure that out when COVID came, and during the COVID time, we restricted it to 50 people at a time. And so that was basically half of what we think ought to be occurring, which is basically 100 or 125. But the theoretical capacity is somewhat higher.
That's a lot of people in that pool at
It
one
is a
time.
lot of people in that pool.
All right. That's like the
Hopefully
that's like the cars that have 5 seats,
Hopefully the
you know?
kids will run over to the splash pad.
All right, we're chuckling with you, okay?
No, I
We're not
understand.
making fun of you,
No,
we're
no, I
chuckling with you,
understand.
because we're kind of.
That's all right, I've been made
We've all
fun of a
probably
lot
been
up
over
here.
there, and so we're envisioning 125 people in that pool.
I'm used to it.
I assume they would be taking turns getting in and out, so, all right. Okay, now that we've had our chuckle for the evening, thank you. Are there any further questions for Mr. Walker? I don't
Thank
see
you.
anybody's lights on. Okay. Christie, or anything else?
Staff doesn't have anything else, but there may be somebody in the audience.
Right, I'm getting there, I just want to make sure. Is there any comments from anyone in the audience today? Okay, please come on up. And if you could identify your name and then the street that you live on.
Hello, my name is Eric Farrar. I live on Traders Parkway in the Ventana community. I am one of the 3 residents who is a candidate for the Board of Directors. The other 2 are participating online. Councilman Applegate, thank you for your concerns regarding the number of members of the Board of Directors who are residents before approving this motion. That is one of the concerns that all 3 candidates for the Board of Directors who are residents share. Regarding the occupancy, the fire department rated the occupancy for the entire rec center at 70 persons at full capacity. So I'm not sure where that 270 persons came from. We are, as a residents, we are very concerned about the increase in the mill levy. Granted, we understand the debt and the restructuring of finances. However, we feel that we would like to have the residents be the ones to make those decisions. There are many amenities that were in the original design that Challenger Homes, since they've been used as the guidance as to what amenities will be provided, that they have promised that have fallen through. They are already advertising amenities for Ventana South on their webpage that we know is not in the service plan. So the board of directors that is under the majority of developers seems very, the conflict of interest has been raised many, many times within the community. The members in the community often do not attend the meetings that have been provided, the budgetary meeting that was described, as well as the monthly board meetings. One of the major reasons is the time does not allow for many of our military members to attend, especially when it was in person. So there are many things that we hope we can change when we have a majority of residents, and I hope that you will take into consideration that upcoming election in your decision tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I believe Mr. Rick was online and had a question.
Yes, Madam Mayor, you asked the question about how many members are currently Ventana residents, and the question was answered.
Okay, did you have another question?
No, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Farrar, thank you very much for coming forward with your comments tonight, and good luck with the election, and thank you for stepping forward to be part of your community, and we are listening to you. Is there any other questions online?
I do have one hand raised from Mike Lawrencell.
Mr. Lawrencell, go ahead.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity. One of the questions it's been brought up, I think, a couple of times, but specifically I'm curious about is the fact that there's obviously a goal to have a resident majority board for Ventana. And as was mentioned, there are 3 candidates that are on the ballot for the upcoming election. However, there are 2 existing non-resident board members that have also put themselves forward for re-election. If the goal is to get a resident majority board, why are we having existing non-resident board members running against us at a cost to the Ventana residents for the actual election?
I'm going to restate your question because I believe it was rather hard to hear. In summary, I believe your question was, if we're trying to get a majority of residents on the board, 3 members, why are the current board members that are non-residents allowed to also run? Is that your question? Did I get it right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Mr. Walker?
Yeah, so again, I would tell you that anybody who is a registered elector can apply to be a member of the board. And so the district is agnostic as it relates to trying to get a resident board. What we're saying here is we're restricting a developer board from raising the fees, that if that were to occur, they cannot raise the fees, but a resident board can. I don't want anybody to think that that's an objective of the district manager or of anybody who works for the district. The district is just like a city. Anybody who's eligible can run. And so it wasn't manufactured by the district nor the district manager. I'd also like to point out that part of the rationale for trying to get this done is that every day interest rates are going up, and we're all in that environment. We're ready to issue bonds at a favorable insured rate of around 4%, and replace those 8% bonds, basically cutting the interest charges in half. But that rate last 2 months ago was 3%, and so it's going up that fast. So we're just anxious to get this done and get it completed.
Mr. Larnell, does that answer your question?
Not particularly, but I don't have any further expansion on that.
Okay. All right. I think he just would prefer if it's just residents running.
I understand completely.
But they do have the right to run, so just like any election, right?
Correct.
So, all right. So it sounds like some people need to get out there and walk the streets, but walk them carefully. I fell in Ventana and broke my arm last year.
No.
So. But you have really nice sidewalks. I don't even have a good excuse. I didn't fall in a crack or anything. I just splatted. So very nice, beautiful area out there. Okay, are there any further questions or comments from anyone in the audience or online?
There was a question from Mr. Stephen Edelman. He has indicated, though, that Mr. Walker has addressed his issue.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, council member, any further questions? Okay, were you reaching for a question? Or okay, seeing no questions, anyone like to make a motion? Okay, I don't see anyone making a motion. I'm sorry.
We just need to close the public hearing.
Close the public hearing. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Do I see a motion for Resolution 22-017? Okay, seeing none, the item fails for lack of a motion from anyone on the board. Where does this issue go now, Mr. Attorney?
I think you said it, Mayor, that it dies on the floor with no motion, so
Okay,
the effect is a denial of the motion. Yeah.
okay. I'm sure Mr. Walker is familiar with how to do all that kind of stuff, so. Okay, all right, well, leave it to Fountain, right? All right, thank you, Mr. Walker. All right, we're moving on to item 9G, follow-up discussion of proposed landscape conservation standards. Mr. Blankenship I'm Katie. All right.
This is so exciting.
Good evening, I'm back again. Christy Martinez with the Planning Department. I'm also here with Katie Helm, who's the Conservation and Sustainability Manager. Back in February of this year, we did bring before a discussion item before the board or the council to discuss some proposed landscape standard changes that we would like direction from City Council to move forward with drafting those regulations. Just as a reminder, the proposed regulations would apply to both residential and commercial. The residential landscape standards would only apply to new construction and is very similar to what the developers were already working through with the process with the previous water conservation, which was a recommendation to install water conserving and xeriscape within their residential lots. At this point, we're really just seeking some consensus and guidance from council to make that from a policy recommendation to a requirement, which would be in compliance with the water master plan that was recently adopted in addition to the water scarcity plan. And with that, I will pass it off to Katie.
Hi again, Katie Helm with Utilities. A lot of this is going to be review from when we met 2 months ago, but slightly condensed, so if you have any questions, please jump in. I'll try not to be too repetitive, but as Christy said, the goal of this is to encourage sustainable, attractive, and functional landscapes that support our ability to meet the growing water needs of our community well into the future. Objective is to improve landscape standards through strategic design and codification, and then, like Christy said, this aligns with goals in the Water Master Plan as well as the Water Efficiency Plan. Next slide, please. I'm going to do a high-level review of some of the proposed residential landscape standards for the single-family residential side. So backyard landscaping would be required, it's not currently. Irrigated turf would be limited, and I'll go through that in a bit. Turf would be permittable in the backyard only. Rock mulch limited. Previously, with those that participated in the lowered tap fee incentive, we saw that there would be a limited amount of turf, but then there was excessive rocking, so we're trying to resolve that here. We also updated tree, shrub, and plant quantity requirements so that they are similar to some of our neighboring jurisdictions. And then a commitment statement on the landscape plan, which I'll talk about in a little bit. Next slide. You're going to see 2 very similar tables. I'm sure these look familiar, but the first one talks about the tree, plant, and shrub counts. At the top, you'll see that we categorized lots into 4 different sizes based on their overall square footage. And from that, we proposed turf limitations based on a percentage of the pervious area, which is very similar to the lowered tap fee incentive that we had. Also, proposed rock mulch allotments capped at 30%. And then also, landscaping cannot contain any items from the prohibited plant list. Next slide. This is extremely similar to the last one, but instead of limiting turf based on a percentage of the pervious area, we're looking at a hard stop at a maximum square footage for each lot size. Next slide. Previously, I talked about a commitment statement on the landscape plan. So what that could include is requirement of an irrigation controller that'll help you manage the watering schedule attached to your landscape so that you can get a better handle on your water usage. Soil amendment, so that's material that we add to the dirt to make it more permeable and improve its ability to retain moisture. It also helps promote a deep root system for any plants that are installed there. Group plants based on shared water requirements. So if 2 plants require low water, then we're not going to put a moderate using water plant in the middle of that. Specifications demonstrating all of these standards have been met on that plan, and that would include the lot size, turf area requirements, and then shrub and tree sizes and quantities. Also, no mixed zones. So what that would look like is we wouldn't have a zone that had pop-up spray heads, but also rotor spray heads in the same area, because that kind of messes up the water distribution in that area. Turf areas will not share a zone with non-turf areas, and then certification that the irrigation has been designed to meet the needs of the landscape. Also, spray heads and rotors would have check valves and pressure regulating stems. Next slide.
Similar to the residential landscape standards, we currently have landscape standards adopted within Title 17 for commercial, industrial, and multifamily. We're looking to modify those similar to the residential proposals, which would be having the plantings follow the plant list that's adopted to Fountain's climate zone. Ensuring that the commercial developments are providing irrigation plans to ensure that the plantings that they are provided will thrive within our climate, but they're also not being drowned or not provided enough water based upon where they're planted in conjunction and coordination with the addition of the additional plants that are in that area. It would be based upon the irrigation controller, similar to what Katie mentioned with a pop-up spray versus a drip line, or how they are planted and watered. There would be additional landscape notes on there to add soil amendments and additional maintenance notes. But we're also looking to review the tree caliper sizes, the percentage of non-living material, and then the parking lot standards to make sure that where we do plant landscaping, that it is functional as well. Next slide. We're looking to limit the type of landscaping in terms of the irrigated turf. Typically with sod, it's bluegrass or a fescue blend, which is a high water usage. There are a variety of other types of grasses that can be installed that are water tolerant, that use less water, but would still provide an aesthetically pleasing and functional area. Looking to limit some of the irrigated turf areas within the commercial areas, And then again, to duplicate a lot of the same maintenance and soil amendments to make sure that what is being planted will thrive. Next slide.
Okay, last time we talked, there was a bit of discussion on artificial turf, so I wanted to review some of those numbers again. I don't think I had a slide on any of that data, but studies show that artificial turf can be up to 69 degrees warmer than neighboring natural grass in the same location. Natural grass rarely gets warmer than 100 degrees. Synthetic turf will average about 140 to 170 in sunny conditions. It's not always permeable, so it doesn't aid in stormwater management. It can be slippery, and if you've seen it driving around neighborhoods, some of it is very clearly artificial, whereas others looks a little bit more natural. So wanted to review some of those numbers with you today. And that was the reason we were mentioning that at the last meeting, is because we do not want artificial turf to be supplemental to living plant material. That's not something that we're recommending. Next slide. We talked about the recommended plant list that we worked with Colorado State University El Paso County Extension Office to create, and this aligns with everything we've discussed so far. With that, they created a very comprehensive plant list for us that identifies plants that thrive within our hardiness zone. It details their water requirements, sun requirements, soil preference, do they attract pollinators, and we're going to make this available to builders in the area as well as community members. It's going to be available for everyone, but it's going to be a great resource for anyone that is wanting to pursue low water plant material, or also just be helpful for anyone that's trying to create a design that aligns with what we're recommending here. Next slide. Neighboring communities. During our research, we looked to see what some of our neighbors were doing. Colorado Springs is currently working on a proposal to limit irrigated turf to 25% of the pervious area, so very similar to what we're working on. Aurora's proposal, they're going through that process right now, but turf would be restricted to backyards only, not to exceed 45% of the yard or 500 square feet, which is smaller, whichever is smaller. And then this aligns with what we're discussing as well when we talk about functional turf. Turf would be prohibited in common areas, medians, curbside landscaping, and front yards, so where it's not necessarily utilized for function, but it serves more of an aesthetic feature. Commerce City, turf cannot exceed 50% of the pervious area. And then Greeley limits high water use plants to no more than 25% of the pervious. So this isn't a brand new concept. There's definitely other providers that are doing this as well. Next slide. Long-term savings, I think I may have talked about this before, but there wasn't a slide on it. So consider that about 40% of a household's overall water use occurs outdoors. Xeriscape, there are so many variables with Xeriscape, so please understand that this is a rough estimate, but it can require up to 60% less water than turf. I know that there were some concerns last time regarding the maintenance allocated to caring for Xeriscape versus turf, and I think that definitely depends on the complexity of the plants that you have installed. Again, there's a lot of variables there, but I would say that with what we're looking at, Xeriscape requires annual pruning, and it's less frequent maintenance compared to mowing, but mowing is a little bit more simplistic because you're not dealing with those different species. So just something to think about. Next slide.
And I know we're throwing a lot of information at you because a lot of it is repetitive from what we had talked about in February. One of the concerns that was raised then was the aesthetic look of the irrigated turf, and does it still serve the same function as Kentucky bluegrass? Can you still walk into your backyard barefoot and be able to enjoy your backyard? And the answer is yes. So Kentucky bluegrass is one of the highest water using types of seed or turf that can be installed. It requires watering 3 or more days, even more, 5 to 7 minutes per zone in really dry areas, and especially within Fountain's climate, where in the summer we can go anywhere between 70 to 100 plus degree days. So we're trying to get away from a lot of those high water type grasses and looking at more of the low water needs, such as buffalo grass or blue gamma. So in the images, you can see that they still have that same type of the lushness. You can still walk through it without, being stabbed in the foot by a sticker or anything like that. But it does require significantly less water usage. Blue gamma requires water twice a month once it's been established, and blue gamma is actually once or every 10 days. And it's dry. So in terms of the water usage, it's significantly less compared to bluegrass or a fescue blend. Next slide. So just to summarize again, we're looking for consensus from City Council to direct staff to move forward with drafting regulations based on the discussions that have occurred back in February and again tonight, to modify the residential landscape standards that were previously recommended and incentivized to make it more of a policy of a requirement versus a recommendation. To modify the commercial landscape standards to be more water conscious and similar in nature to xeric landscaping. And again, just to seek, at this point, staff's just kind of seeking direction from council to either move forward with drafting regulations to bring back at a future date for consideration, or if you would like more information on a specific item or two. That's it.
Okay, do any council members have any questions? I'm sorry?
No.
Okay, so we're not voting on this, it's just a discussion item.
Correct. It's just a discussion item. We're really just looking for a direction if this is something that council would like to move forward with and have staff work on drafting regulations that would then be brought back before you at a later date for consideration.
So things often have unintended consequences, and I think we're all going to be stating the cities of Superior and Louisville as unintended consequences. One city you can afford to rebuild in, one city you can't afford to rebuild in, because one of the cities is under the new standards of the building codes that they adopted right before the fire occurred. The other city council was getting ready to adopt them. Thank heavens for their citizens, they didn't have them adopted yet. You said this is all for new builds. The problem they're having up there is every house that burned down is being considered a new build and has to come in under those new building codes and new laws. I think when this was brought to us, we were all thinking new builds in terms of a new development. So what do you classify as a new build?
I think that's a really great question. I'm glad you brought up what was going on in those other cities. I think in this case, it might not necessarily, well, we want to define what a new build is, but in the case of homes that are destroyed, I would say that the updated landscape standards are a recommendation, but not necessarily a requirement.
And one of the other questions council members asked you to bring back was, what was the cost increase this is going to add to the new house?
Okay.
Since, in two reasons. A, you're not letting grass in the front, is that correct? All the turf would be in the back?
That's the proposal.
The proposal, right. And then also they would have to have the backyard done, where now they don't have to. The citizen gets to do what they want after they live there for a while or not do it in some cases, yes. But anyways, so what is the cost difference?
Okay, great question. So I tried to answer that in a different slide, but I realized that it may not have met what you were seeking. What I was able to find loosely was the amount of water savings that could be achieved by the long-term water savings achieved by the occupant by having to care for a landscape that was utilizing xeric material instead of a lot of turf. The initial cost that would be rolled into the value of the home, I was unable to determine specific numbers for that as far as what's the cost of installing a xeric landscape versus a primary turf landscape. Just because all of that is rolled, I mean, do you have more insight on that as far as how those are generated and rolled into the fees?
I don't have specific dollar amounts because it's very difficult to quantify what a home builder would be able to get those plants and materials at, because they get a discount because they're buying in bulk for multiple contracts with different landscapers and things like that, versus an individual homeowner who may be going and purchasing that. But in the cost comparisons, the price to install the amount of landscaping that would potentially be necessary to re-landscape a lot would be pretty comparable to what it would be to install the same amount and plus all the watering to reestablish it. So you'll see the cost savings on the back end from the water savings from it, where you're not having to go and irrigate a lot of the irrigated turf that is currently allowed within the regulations. Not the greatest answer to compare apples to apples, because it's not a great comparison, but I definitely understand where you're coming from, because building codes can have a significant cost incurred with it to install up to different codes. When it comes to landscaping, those costs are significantly reduced because you're not looking at a lot of the labor and materials in order to get a lot of those.
I understand that, but it seems like you could talk to a builder and say, what is your cost to put in grass in the front of a house, And then if we brought you these standards, what do you think the cost would be there? I think they could come up with a fairly good guesstimate for you.
And that's the struggle that we had, is that builders have a different cost than if I were to go out and contact a nursery.
Right, but you're
And so
talking
that's the
new builds.
Correct, but
So
if
the
we're also
builder would be
talking about
doing it.
ensuring that if a house is destroyed by a natural disaster, it wouldn't be a home builder that's receiving those costs. It would be the individual homeowners that may
Right,
not
I
get those
understand.
bulk savings.
Yeah. Okay. I have some other questions, but, I'm sorry? Oh, Dan has his hand up, okay.
Mayor, thank you for acknowledging me. I just want to reiterate the reason that we're in front of you and proposing these standards is because of our situation with water. And as we go through time, we're learning that, to acquire more water resources is going to be pretty expensive. So if we're going to look at costs, I think it's fair to also look at, if we don't do something like this, what are we looking at in costs associated to acquire those resources to serve these homes? We're certainly going to have, if we're using less water, we're going to have to acquire less resources and have lower costs there. So just something to keep in mind as we move forward with these proposed changes.
Right. I'm just concerned that we sometimes are talking out of both sides of our mouths. We say there's not enough affordable or attainable housing in the community, right? But then we're going to put
Absolutely.
standards on them that could potentially raise the price of the home. So I think it is a fair question and information that we need to know before we make the decision, because we can't talk about we need more affordable housing, but yet we're going to put an additional cost on of X amount of dollars up front, so you can't even afford to get into the home. So that is why I think that's a pretty fair question for, if we're going to continue down this path.
Sure,
Right, Scott?
absolutely. And I just, until we're able to address our water issue and acquire additional resources, we're not going to be talking about a whole lot of affordable or unaffordable housing. It's going to be unaffordable because of our inability to get the resources that we need to serve those properties. So we're just trying to turn over every stone to balance our situation.
Mr. Trainer?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. One thing that might be a really good data point that I think would help answer your question, and I'm going to suggest this, that when we come back, if that's what the council wants, that we could actually probably take randomly, I'll say three different existing properties throughout the city, get an estimate from a landscaper of what that would cost to landscape that home with basically what you see, right? And then give us hey, if we wanted to change that to a xeriscape, and you could probably provide 3 different examples of, kind of a range. And if anything, that would at least give you an idea of what's the percent difference, right? Is it 20% more? Is it 10% more? I don't know what that'd be. Would that help answer that question? Knowing that whether, it's a homeowner or us getting that quote versus a builder, the raw number may be different, but the percent difference between a regularly landscaped, full grassed yard versus a xeriscaped yard, I think we'll at least get probably a pretty good idea of what the cost difference would be as a percent. Think that would be helpful to help answer that question?
It would, but we're also talking about the backyard, so we're going to need 2 different numbers. We're going to
Gotcha,
need one for
gotcha,
if the front
yeah.
yard is grass or, why don't you turn yours off? There we go, okay. That's why we're getting feedback. Okay. We're adding the backyard in, so we're going to need that cost on, because what that would be too. And Mr. Hinton?
This is just a comment. I agree with Mr. Blankenship in his assessment, and I also agree with our city manager, Mr. Trainer. We do need some comparison. We need something to look at to be able to make an educated decision here. I understand the concerns on the water and everything, but we need to have some comparison so that we, as a council and a body, be able to make the most effective decision moving forward.
Thank you, Mr. Hinton. I believe we do have a couple I'm not sure if Carl's standing to speak or just standing. Okay, all right. Mrs. Smith?
Hello, Jean Smith, Widefield resident. I'd like to make an observation. I've not heard anywhere in the discussion that the future homeowner is going to be included in the selection of the trees and plants. Have you considered the allergies that some people may have due to some of these plants? I think it's a really good idea that the developer puts in the grass. That's basically what you're talking about here. But then at what point do you stop dictating what someone's yard is going to look like in terms of landscaping? Whose decision is it for what kind of tree, what plant or shrub will be put on that property? So I really think at some point, the future homeowner should know and be able to choose based on their preference for plant, shrub, color, if you want to get into all that, that they have that choice, not someone else dictating what their yard would look like. I think the idea of providing a list of plants that are appropriate to this area is a really good idea. Again, who will do that to the future owner? Will it be the builder, developer, real estate person? People do need a guide. As I said a couple of months ago, it was all trial and error, how I planted stuff, but I think we've come beyond that. But again, I think that this other consideration, because all we talk about is asthma and allergies and more, and people are allergic to some of these plants that are being listed. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the audience? I do have, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just have a comment. Just knowing that I'm a gardener and taking care of my mother's yard, and I'm tired of watering and mowing, I know that I've looked at getting buffalo grass, grama grass, and that seed is more expensive for us. Have we talked to any of the sod farms around here about, are they going to be able to offer us those kind of mixes as a turf mix, you know, as an alternative? Because where are these people going to get this stuff?
Those are common seed mixtures that you can find within Colorado. I've not talked to individual turf providers, but they're not unusual to find here. I can certainly get quotes on the cost comparison per square footage as well. That's something that I don't have, but I can gather that.
So in the notebook that we have here, the Water Master Plan, on page 2, when we were talking about potential future policies and initiatives, I think I did express some concerns with this being adopted on some of this stuff and how it was going to be enforced. And so I have a question here. It says, under outdoor irrigation standards, it says, you're talking about Colorado Springs and what they adopted, and they said they have an ordinance that includes enforcement provisions. How do you intend to enforce this, and who's going to pay for it?
When you speak about enforcement, are you referring to the water scarcity response plan?
No, this is
Okay.
under potential future policies and initiatives. The scarcity plan is on page 3.
Katie.
Oh.
Go, I was gonna
We got-
defer to-
We get stereo over here. Let me try and address that. I think, you know, at this point, if we make it to the point where we have regulations or the council is desirous of moving forward with developing regulations, I think that would be the time to think about and how we might enforce this. But once again, it's all based on our water situation and trying to address this. Things like, you know, the less, the turf that uses less water, the people are, even though the seed may be more expensive, the initial cost may be more expensive, if it uses less water, our water rates are at the ceiling. So they're probably going to save significantly more in water costs by going to less watering or a landscape that uses less water. What we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to get a hold of some landscapers and ask them, what would it cost to landscape a residential lot with our current standard, and then we'll give them our suggested or proposed standard and say, how much does it cost? And then we can bring that back to you and say, here's exactly what it costs up front. We're also going to ask them, maybe they can estimate how much water difference would be required for one or the other. So then we can apply that water cost to the cost estimate too. Because it may be something that if you spend a little bit up front, you save a lot more in the end. And then it benefits our situation. So I would say at this point in time, if the council's interested in having us, move forward with this, fine, we will, but we're primarily doing it to try and better our water situation.
And I get all that. I'm
Yeah.
not trying to be argumentative.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to get a lot of the questions answered, because I really have a lot of concerns when you step into someone's backyard and start telling them
Oh, yeah.
how they're going to landscape their backyard. I have concerns when you say there's not going to be any turf allowed in the front. Where are the kids supposed to play? I allowed my children to go play in the neighbors' front yards, but
Right.
I didn't know the families very well, so they weren't allowed to go play in the backyards. If the turf is only allowed in the backyard, where are the children supposed to play? And I think that's a realistic question. And I just have a lot of, I'm not saying I don't want to go for it, I just have concerns with the hard-handedness that this appears to be having. And at some point, people are going to get really frustrated. And I believe we're only discussing residential at this moment. We haven't even touched commercial. And I do have someone else in the back that would like would like to say something.
But thank
Mr.
you for
Clements.
making that comment about the hard-handedness of it, because that helps us to understand, your perspective, and we can certainly dial back from that. Absolutely.
Right, okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Rick Clements. We moved here in 2006. My backyard was a mess. I went through there and I rototilled it all. I went over to Spencer's, went to their classes on the grass and so forth, like that. And I bought Hercules grass seed. And it's extremely good. It germinated very fast, requires low water, and it's beautiful. My backyard is wonderful. My front yard is a mess. And I don't have to put as much water in the back, but the front, I put water on it, I put fertilizer on it, and it never looks like my backyard. But you can't get Hercules anymore. I don't know why. I went over to Spencer's, I said, I need some more Hercules because I want to reseed. We can't get it. So, I don't know. So, it's a good seed. It doesn't require much water, but now you can't get it. So, I don't know.
Thank you. Okay, does any other council members have any comments or questions for staff? So the decision before us tonight is if we want staff to, I'm sorry, were you going to say something?
I just have one comment.
Okay.
To give Mr. Blankenship a perspective on the hard-handedness. This is from my mother's wisdom, 95 years. She gets her gas bill from Black Hills, and they send out the little chart of where she ranks in there, and that ticks her off. Because she says, I'm paying the bill, how do they get to determine what I'm using? And so that's just kind of when you get out there and talk to the public, that's kind of, I'm paying the water bill, what's the deal? And that, I know a lot of that's education, but I know, I hear it every month.
Thank you. Yeah, and I just wrote this down. We need to do a reality check. And like I say, try and balance this, and it obviously has a lot of work. It's a work in progress.
Councilmember Duncan?
Yeah, and I agree with you, Dan. I appreciate the forward thinking of you and your staff, and it's going to be trial and error, going through what we can and can't do, and I don't know about even offering some type of rebate program, but it's going to be a lot of trial and error. These are waters, territory of waters that we have never tread on before. So it's going to be a lot of trial and error. And I do like the suggestion to use plants that are hypoallergenic. I do like those. And, if we had some type of guide to help in that process, it's just going to be some trial and error. We're never going to appease everyone, but we do have a water issue that is real, and we have to address it.
A few years ago, when we went to the builders with 3 choices of what they could do, we gave them a choice of reducing, I can't even remember what they all were. I remember sitting in Curtis's office and him drawing it all out for us. So Todd, you know what I'm referring to. The 3 choices of how they could reduce lot size a little bit and how much they did the landscaping in the front. And each one reduced the amount that they had to pay in different fees. Is that correct? Am I remembering that correctly? That was an incentive plan. To an incentive plan for builders that if they do have a variety of xeriscaping in the front yard, as an option to having to just put in grass. Many of the developers come in and they think that's all the city offers. There's beautiful xeriscaping options out there everywhere. I sent Katie, a different link today of one I had just discovered this weekend and took one of their classes online. And it was a kind of don't plant this, which is the one you commonly see in the nursery, but plant this. And it not only was low maintenance, they were native plants is what they were pushing. But I looked through the list of plants on the don't plant this instead. 90% of them of the don't plants are the only ones you can purchase at your local nursery. So people are going when they're wanting to do their lawns and they're buying what's there. So I think part of the education process needs to begin working with our local nurseries and places that carry these products and getting them to bring in the native plants that work in our areas with low to no water maintenance once they're established. I really like incentive programs much better than heavy-handed programs. And while I think we need to keep exploring the options of getting people to go more towards low maintenance and low water, because I agree with Dan, we do have a water issue, and the more we can get people to do that, and it's from the get-go when their house is built, because most people, when they walk into development, they kind of like the front yard they see in the model home. So if we can get them to be doing it at the model homes and get people to get an idea of all the different alternatives that are available, I think that would be really, really good. I'm not ready personally to go forward with any type of resolutions or ordinances with this. I don't think we're there. I think we're a ways off. And this is just residential we've discussed tonight. So I think commercial needs to be a separate discussion. But I don't know how the rest of the council members feel. I'd like to hear from each of them and let me know on what their thoughts are on that. I'm sorry.
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Rick has a comment.
Okay, let's him go first and then Katie, okay? Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Rick.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a quick comment. I agree with your previous comments. Period. I think the plan presented is a little bit too rigid. It's not flexible enough. It doesn't give people a chance to individualize or personalize their own yards. So I would not be in favor of moving forward at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Rick.
I had a question for you, Mayor Thompson. You had mentioned the value in having the turf in the front yard, which we're not necessarily tied to it definitely being in the front or only being in the back. The thought was to have one section of contiguous turf so that it could be maximized for functionality and not just for aesthetics. So are you open to the idea of one area of contiguous turf, whether it be in the front or the back? That's up to the person purchasing the home.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure at this point.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just
I'd have to see
curious.
some examples of what you're talking about.
And I can definitely share the plant list with everyone. It is very extensive. I wouldn't describe it as limiting. We definitely don't want to limit the amount of species that someone can select for their home, so I can absolutely share that after this today.
Mayor, I think we've gotten the direction that we need this evening. We thank the council for that direction and
Well, I'd still like to hear from some of the other council members that
Okay.
haven't spoken, so. Councilmember Hinton?
I just think that we just need more data points to make a good decision. I think that Dan and your team, if you guys could just go back and the questions that were raised, if you can just investigate on that, bring us some comparison data, that's just for me speaking, that I can make a better decision on this.
Okay, absolutely.
Sounds like the general consensus is just, we need more time on this. We just need more time to look at the data, so it's a discussion for another night.
Do you have any
So,
specific concerns or comments?
not necessarily, outside of what was already like in question.
Okay.
So,
All right, thank
yeah.
you. Councilmember Estes?
I just did a quick search online to see if I could find sod that is one of those grama or something, because not just seed, because some people don't want to plant seed. They want to be able to roll out a thing of sod, and I'm not seeing those as a sod option here. So, if we could if the sod farms have that as an option and stuff, because like I said, planting seed, that's a lot of work. Mr. Clements can attest to that. It's a lot of work for somebody, like I'm disabled. It's a ton of work for me to go rototill everything. So it's just if we could see if there's that option in the area, if somebody wanted to put those water-saving grasses in as a sod.
Yeah, I made that note to go ahead and reach out to the retailers in our area to see if that's something that we can actually get them thinking about and possibly working with them to make those plant materials available to people, because, quite frankly, if they can't be, commercially available, we can write all the regulations we want in the world, and it's not gonna, be able to be implemented. So we'll start working on some of those things, and also kind of doing, like I said, kind of a reality check and backing off on some of the hard-handedness or too rigidity, and maybe adding some flexibility in, and see if we can get something a little bit closer to what might be comfortable for you all.
I would be more than happy to work with you if you would like to set up meetings with different businesses in the area on what they would carry. Nothing more frustrating than going over to a local place. I don't want to name stores.
Right.
And trying to buy plants. And they have stuff in there that, is for zone 2 and zone 3. And, there's no way it's going to survive even one hot day through here, right? It needs to be tons of water every day.
Right.
And then the things they tell you will survive, they don't. So, yeah, of course, it would probably help if I bought things just not off the clearance rack. That might help too, but I don't feel comfortable putting the money into it until I know it's going to survive in the area. So I think we got some work, maybe a lot of education, Katie. Sounds like a lot of education with the citizens that are moving into our area as they're wanting to do their backyards and design them. But, I looked at this plan and I thought, where's the space for the guy that just wants to put a pool in his backyard? Yep, it isn't in there. And that kind of bothered me. So, I know pools take water, but,
Yeah.
the philosophy has always kind of been if they're willing to pay for it, right?
That's America.
Yeah, all right. Okay, any questions or comments from anybody else before we move on to the next item? Okay, lost my agenda somewhere in here. Thank you so much for all your hard work on that, because I know you're really passionate about it, so thank you. All righty. We are on to item H. Set up a public hearing date, May 10th, 2022, to consider the request of a report of changes for Baldwin Cone Liquor Group LLC, DBA Clicks Wine and Spirits. So we're only setting a date, right?
That's correct, Madam Mayor. So
Okay.
typically, this would be a routine item that we list under consent agenda, just setting a public hearing date. The reason why I chose to have it under our new business is just to give a little bit of background information. Clicks Wine and Spirits is the liquor store that is up near Safeway. They're expanding that Safeway building. Now, there are some regulations when it comes to moving a liquor establishment. But the reason why I wanted to bring this up to you, we are just setting the public hearing. At the public hearing, you will hear that we're going to request that we don't have to do another neighborhood survey because of the location. So we have that option, and I'm going to request that at council at that hearing date. But that's all we're doing is setting the date tonight.
So do you need a motion to do that?
Yes.
Okay, do we have
Question.
Councilmember Hinton has a question.
Sylvia, you said expanding the Safeway building, or is it a standalone brick and mortar liquor store?
It's connected.
It's connected to Safeway. Okay.
So it's the one on the west
It's a separate
side of
building in
Safeway?
between
Okay.
Safeway
Oh,
and the
okay. It's not
dollar
okay.
store.
I got you. I got you.
Yeah.
Between the dollar, oh, I'm down by Subway.
No, the other way,
it's the
between Dollar Tree and Safeway.
I don't drink, so I don't pay attention to where they are. I guess I'll look next time I'm up there. Councilmember Corey?
Can I make a motion on this?
Yes.
Oh, wait, if we're good on that. So I'd like to set a public hearing date for May 10th, 2022, to consider the request of report changes for Baldwin Cohen Liquor Group.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second? Councilmember Applegate?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion on the second on the floor. Are there any further discussion? Okay, if not, please vote.
Councilmember Rick, how do you vote?
Yes.
7 yes, motion carried.
Okay, we have Resolution 22-018, a resolution approving the purchase and implementation of a new utility SCADA system for electric and water utilities. E. Reinhardt and C. Christian. Mr. Reinhardt, I don't remember you being here before.
Nope, this is my first time.
Welcome.
So be easy on me.
Welcome to the long meeting.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Thank you. My name is Eric Reinhardt. I'm a journeyman lineman, and I'm a line crew foreman for the Fountain Utility Department. And I've also been asked to take on the role of project manager should we get approval to replace our SCADA system that we have now. Currently, the electric and water departments operate their own independent SCADA systems that have become outdated and are nearing the end of life. So approval of this resolution will allow Fountain Utilities to not only update the current systems, but also to combine both water and electric systems into one system that could provide greater functionality and serviceability for our future. Now more than ever, it's important for utilities to be responsible with our resources, and acquiring this new SCADA system will allow both the electric and water departments to monitor their usage and losses more effectively, ensuring that we are operating as efficiently as possible for our customers, as well as improving our outage response capabilities. We've selected Surveillance Technology Corporation and Precision Testing Group for this project based on their reputations and expertise in their respective fields, and more specifically for their expertise with our specific SCADA systems that we have now. Surveillance will provide us with a project that will expand our current capabilities and ensure that Fountain Utilities continues to move forward for the future. This will not only replace our aging systems, but also improve upon them with a more intuitive interface, additional monitoring features, and the ability to implement future enhancements. These improvements will assist Fountain Utilities in our efforts to ensure that our customers are satisfied and confident in our ability to meet their needs for years to come. And unless Carl had something else to add, I'd like to respectfully thank you for your time tonight and respectfully ask for your approval of the resolution.
How long do we expect this one to last?
The project?
The SCADA, the new whatever it is.
It's open-ended. The new system, you mean?
Right.
Yeah, it's.
Okay. I just remember when we were getting the other one, and you're like, it's worn out before, and I'm like, at the end of its life.
Yeah, the new system has a lot more capability that we're looking at, and therefore it would have a lot more functionality in the future too. It's expandable for our future needs as well, so we'll be able to add on to it, and that'll help us to stay more relevant with new technologies.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions or comments, or anybody would like to make a motion? Councilmember Duncan?
I move to approve Resolution 22-018 for Utilities SCADA System Improvement Project.
Is there a second? Councilmember Corey?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for Resolution 22-018. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
Councilmember Rick, how do you vote?
Yes.
7 yes, motion carried.
All right, well, very good. Your first time through, you got it done. All right. Next time, put him higher up on the agenda so he doesn't have to wait through the whole meeting, huh? All right, we are down to item 10, correspondence, comments, and ex officio reports. Mr. Trainer.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to chat with you real quickly, update the council on something. Back in February, the city council came together in a workshop, discussed various ballot measures and potential ballot measure ideas. A number of things came out of that. But at the time, the council basically determined that we wanted to explore a couple different ballot measure options. And one of them was around PPRTA. Andy got in earlier tonight with PPACG. There's a lot of acronyms in that sense. Talked about PPRTA, the regional transportation
Authority.
What am I missing? Authority. Authority was the A was throwing me off there for a minute. The PPRTA and potentially joining. He showed the members. Currently, Fountain is not. The other idea that came out of that was potentially exploring a public safety ballot measure. And so those are two things that we came out of and been doing some work on. We've had a couple of teams assigned to start pulling together information. One of the initial things that we did was reach out and start talking to various different consultants to get an idea of what would it take to help us inform the community on those various ballot measures. And not only that, actually help us figure out what the community actually wants. And so that's actually been, that in and of itself, identifying a consultant to work with us has been a little bit of a challenge because there are evidently so many ballot measures and so many initiatives that are out there that a lot of these consultants, they're already taken up. But one of the things that came out of those discussions was the need, before we really even get in bed with a consultant and move forward with a hard effort with our community to start educating on whether it's public safety or the roads, the idea is we really need to survey our community and find out what does our community really want. A lot of times you'll put multiple ballot measures on a ballot and there's a fratricide effect, because people prioritize what they're going to vote for, where they want to put their own resources. And so the consultants have recommended to us, before we even move forward in hiring them or starting to work with them, identifying, going through a survey, developing a survey in our community and implementing that so we can determine where is the support, what are the issues that our community thinks are important, et cetera. Now, so we've gotten some information on that. We've reached out and talked to, or tried to talk to, several different polling companies that do that. There's not a lot that actually are, that get a lot of recommendations as far as really good campaign polling or voter polling. But there's been 5 different entities that have been discussed around various cities that we've talked to. And so we've reached out and we've been able to contact some of them. It looks like the fees for those surveys are going to run between $15,000 and $20,000. And so, before we do anything, I just wanted to make sure I was talking to the council, giving you an idea what those costs are, and get a sense of, how does the council feel about us first? It makes sense for us when that was recommended by the consultants. Makes sense for us that we really do want to know what our community thinks, and we really do need a scientifically valid poll. We can poll. I mean, we've done it in the past. We've shown in our own unscientific polling that we might win, right? And, because it's not a scientific, it's not a statistically valid poll, that was wrong, obviously, in our the last ballot measure we had. So we want to make sure that we do it the right way, that we're asking our citizens the right questions, and that we're getting a statistically valid answer. So I wanted to throw out to the council, get a sense of, how does the council, excuse me, feel about that, moving forward to something like that. Does that question make sense?
I think Councilmember Rick sent in a text, and I'm sorry,
Oh,
my phone
okay.
has locked itself up for some reason. So maybe if he could contact IT with what his comment is, we will get that in the, okay. All righty. So the poll, if we did this, when you say scientific, because I remember when we did the unscientific poll for the
Right.
guy, Mr. Walker brought up the trash thing tonight, for the trash thing. I went through all those comments and found that at least half of them were from people that didn't even live in the city of Fountain, or a
Yeah.
couple of them didn't even live in the state of Colorado.
Yeah.
So makes your data not really worth
Exactly, right.
a lot.
Right.
And,
We learned that's a problem with web polls too, website polls.
Yes.
Can be same things.
right, right.
So the focus for this would be actually finding out, number one, what do the registered voters of Fountain and those that actually vote, what do they think? And so that's the challenge, because you got to develop the survey instrument, and it's got to be a really good instrument. And that's why you hire these experts who know how to ask these questions. But the other part of that is knowing exactly who to ask. And you're going to be polling, I don't know, several thousand voters just to get 200 to 300 full responses to get your statistically valid response. But it will be Fountain voters.
Okay. And they would be the 2 ballot measures
It would be on both, yeah.
to find out, okay.
To get us a sense of, how do people feel about roads? How do they feel about public safety? Where would they likely, if they had to make it a choice, where would they likely want to invest their dollars?
Right, because they are investing in their community.
Right.
They're, roads is one of the leading things. I think just about everybody sitting up here that ran for any office roads has been one of the number one things that people are very, very concerned about. And at some point, if you don't invest in roads in your community, it affects public safety, and it also affects the value of your home and your community in general. And public safety, of course, we all know with all the growth around us and the increase in just really critical incidents. I mean, just this last weekend, everything that we saw happen on the news, maybe not necessarily in the city of Fountain, but in our neighboring communities, a lot going on. And we need to be in front of public safety needs and not run in 6 months behind, because we know it takes a year to get an officer trained and up to speed. Is that about right, Chief? That's right. Okay.
Just one data point I also want to throw in there. The question was asked of the consultant we've been talking with, do you see a problem running 2 ballot measures at the same time? And the answer was not necessarily, but it's generally not a great idea. However, they weren't really comfortable answering the full question until they had a sense of how the voters felt.
Right.
They really have to get a sense of what that survey says to really answer it. They just, as a general sense, it's just something that you want to shy away from. That's just a general comment. But at the same time, they said they really need to know that they need to know what the data is before they can really answer that.
Okay. Ms. Huffman?
Ma'am?
Your light is on. Oh, okay. Didn't want to exclude you. All right. Okay. All right, so council, I think staff is really needing direction on this very quickly. It's something that needs to be made tonight, because ballot deadlines are coming up very, very quickly on things that are going to be put on the ballot, and we haven't even looked at the ballot language yet.
No.
And so deadlines are coming up very, very quickly. And if you think backwards, you have to work, Sylvia works backwards, right? And you can't say. So what is
We went through the calendar, and to set the ballot language, I believe we decided that we could go all the way into, was it August, Troy?
Yeah.
Is that right?
I think that's what you were
We
mentioning.
could go all the way into August because we don't need to do it by ordinance. It can be done by resolution.
to put something on it, on the ballot?
Yes.
But we need the ballot language to be looking at it and seeing if that's really what we want it to say. Because Troy, yes needs to say yes and no needs to say no, okay? That's been a huge complaint from people when they vote, that,
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's either easier said than done, but yes, absolutely. And the Colorado law is very clear on that too, that yes is yes, no is no.
yeah, but they seem to have a way of writing them
Yeah.
so that you have to vote yes to say no.
Yeah, there has to be a lot of work in developing those questions, even determining, do we develop the question? I mean, if we find out
Right.
that the survey says, the voters are saying, hey, we don't care at all about this issue, only this one, that's going to really direct what we bring back to the community and the council.
Right. Okay, so council members, I'm not seeing any lights on, so.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, go ahead. Mr. Rick?
My recommendation would be not to go forward with the survey. We have about 30,000 residents in Fountain. About 15,000 of them are registered voters. And in the last election, I think we had a total of 2,800 people vote. we can have a survey that says the majority of people are in support of a tax increase for public safety or for roads. The problem isn't getting the number of supporters, it's convincing those 2,800 people to vote for them. And I think rather than survey, I would rather go out and pound the pavement and talk to those individuals and try and change their minds.
Can the
Thank you.
survey be targeted just to registered voters who voted in the last two elections?
It actually will be. That's one of the reasons that cost is so high, because the population that we have to choose from that are actually voters who have voted is so small, and they have to get at least 200 to 300 to respond. That ends up being a lot of work. And so it ends up being, I mean, you think about it, $15,000 to $20,000 for 200 to 300 responses. That's, it's quite a bit of money.
Mr. Rick, does that address your concern?
Yes, ma'am, I understand. But I'd rather not go forward.
Okay, thank you for your opinion. Okay. Mr. Applegate?
Yeah, I think we need to go forward with the survey. There's no other way we're going to be able to find out. We can't go door to door. That would just be weird. So we pretty much have to do the survey. Let's do it.
Okay, there's a second opinion. Mr. Hinton?
My opinion is that I know it's a cost for a short amount of people to turn out, but if we're looking for that scientific data or that data point that we need to see if these ballot measures can get the most chance to succeed, then I say we go ahead and do it. I think it's money worthwhile to spend to be able to, for the future of Fountain.
Councilmember Duncan?
Scott, so with the survey professionals, would they be the door-to-door person, or how would they?
Phone calls or whatever.
They would actually, it'd likely be randomized phone calls, randomized within that population group. But yes, they actually are the polling company as well. We wouldn't be doing that.
So where would they get the numbers from?
The numbers as far as the voter,
Because
the voter
most
roll?
people have cell phones, so
Oh.
where would they get, well, a lot of the numbers are not on
Great
that
question.
sheet.
Great question. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
There's that, actually, that is available a lot, because anybody that's running a political thing, you can pull lists on, and you can dice them, slice them in many, many ways, and usually you have a phone number of some sort to contact them.
Well, we take our numbers off. Your phone number is not required on your voter registration,
Right.
so a lot of people, because they're tired of all the calls during the election season, and now the texts, and now they just have taken their
A lot of the
phones off
slips
of
that I
their.
had didn't have numbers.
Yeah. it's a
So
lot
I,
of
and
people.
I went
That's a good
through,
question, yeah.
so I just would like to know where would they get the information,
Yeah, do they?
I just would want to know, how would they contact, going door to door would be, would be an easier answer, a more appropriate answer for me than saying that they're going to use some type of phone bank, because how many people change, even if their number is there, when you call, that's not the number, and then how many people answer a number that they don't recognize?
Yep, gotcha.
Especially if it pops up as a company.
Yeah, I just made that note
Yeah.
to ask them myself. Yeah, that's a
I
great
did see a
question.
surveyor around town recently on what do they call those hover things? He would like ride this thing up to somebody's house and then hop off of it. I mean, I thought, that's great. I'm out here walking, and the guy's on this little hoverboard thing. I don't know. And there was another one out there on one of those things you lean forward on.
Oh, a Segway.
A Segway, yeah, around town doing I thought, more power to him, right? So, I think that's I think those are really good points from
Yeah,
her.
it really
though.
is.
Yeah, yeah.
And I agree that we need the data, and you have a valid point. How do we get the data?
Right.
That's the big thing, is do we spend all that money and not get the data that we need?
The
I
other-
think it's valid,
yeah.
we need it to make that decision.
Yeah.
The other thing about a professional surveying company is you and I go out there and talk to them, and we get really involved in the conversation, and even unwittingly, our opinion comes through. Where the survey company, I remember when we did a survey years ago, before I was even on council, something with maybe smart meters or something, a long time ago. The survey company asked so many different questions that didn't have anything to do with the information they were trying to gather. You weren't really sure what they were trying to gather, so you tended to answer them a little bit more honestly than, one of us in front of them wanting to know. I have more lights on. Council member Hinton?
I think any survey company, if they're worth any of their salt or the money that you're paying them, I think they would try all forms of contact. If you just did one, you're set up to fail. So I think that's a question to ask. What forms of contact, plural, not just one?
And remember, at this point, it's been real high level. It's been real high level. This is what we're doing. This is what we need. What can you guys do? And give us a ballpark of what the cost might be. Yeah. Well, we would definitely have to nail that down.
Survey company has a reputation. They're not going to just slack it up. They're going to be pretty accurate.
Okay.
And also, Scott, I would like to know, if they are going door to door, in my neighborhood, we have the no solicitation signs. So if they came, if they asked them for a card, then they would find them. So I would, it's just you know what I'm saying? So, when I was the president, that was what happened. We decided that, to ask whoever came to your door, you had the no solicitation, and we have it at all the entrances where I live. And if they gave you a card, then they were subject to be fined. So I don't know how do they get around that?
I would suspect that if this is a company we're hiring and that's no solicitation, they're going to have direct. I can't imagine them going door to door on a no solicitation, but that's just something we'd want to make sure that it's real crystal clear.
Usually offering information is how they get around something like that. They're not selling anything, which is what solicitation is.
I just can't speak to that. I'd have to ask,
so, yeah. Richard, your light is still on. Did you have another comment?
Oh, no. Well, yeah, we're only getting 200. If you got 2,800 people, maybe 1,000 of them have a phone, and you only need 200 of them to actually respond to what you're asking. So it's not beyond reality.
All right. Councilmember Corey?
Yeah, I want to move forward with the survey. I do want to ask this question, though. Are we looking at last two elections as an off year? Or are we looking at the last two elections as in like presidential and midterm? That's two different groups of voters, just to keep in mind.
So what I would say is we hire these guys who live in this world and breathe this, every question you guys have. And so I think we really have to rely on the experts and help us determine, hey, what's the best, particularly for these kind of ballot measure questions we're going to be asking.
Right.
What's that pool, right?
Right, but especially because if you're talking like an off-year election, like we said, 2,800 people voted.
Yeah.
We're talking a midterm, it might be 5,000. It might be way more than that.
I think
So
the
it might
last
be,
presidential election was definitely an anomaly in terms of recent elections and how many people voted. But, yeah.
Yeah, I support it. I just would like to know.
Gotcha. Absolutely.
Okay. So I think, it is the end of the meeting. I can't spit anything out anymore. What you're wanting us to know, so we have 5-1.
Yeah.
We have 7 people, and we have 5-1. Maybe I should count myself. We have 6-1 in favor of this. Do you, up to $20,000, is that what you're asking us?
Well, yeah, I just don't want to pull that trigger and move forward. If the council, the consensus was, hey, let's just not waste the community's money, let's not waste the time, whatever those feelings were, I just didn't want to head down that path. We will actually bring back a future agenda item for the council to approve, whoever that company selected is, and then the amount spent for the survey. But it will be definitely less than 20.
Okay. Is there anybody in the audience, dwindling audience? Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, Carl's counts, but he didn't say anything, so. All righty. Okay. So that was just like the first person we took. Todd, do you need as long?
No, but I do have a couple of hot topics for you.
Okay.
Couple. Citywide cleanup, you all get questions about this. We met with Waste Connections. They are going to sponsor 2 citywide cleanup days out at the dump. Engineered landfill, something. They get mad when I call it that. So those dates are going to be May 28th for the spring and September 24th. You can write those down, but I'll send you tomorrow the flyers. We got those done today. They're doing some editing, so I'll send those out to you all. Then we will get those out, social media, website, and they did not change the parameters of that. So a basic truckload to the level will be $10, and then it moves up from there, which is similar to what we used to do, because some folks will show up with some pretty stacked trucks. So that's good news, that they're going to continue to sponsor that. They are going to continue an everyday 50% price off for any Fountain residents, as they have the last few years, so that's going to continue. We're also working with them in code enforcement on a program for seniors, where we sponsor and they will deliver out some dumpsters for free. We're going to do a little presentation with the youth council, see if they would be interested in going out and helping us with that, as well as some ROTCs down here. So I think those would be some good programs. Explorers, yeah, there you go. Yeah, it's a great idea. So they'd like to move forward with that on the senior program as well. So those are all good updates, and I know you all get calls and questions on those. So we'll get those out this week. Today at the CDBG board, $129,000 grant for our Southmore area, so Councilman Corey Applegate's area, his ward. They will receive that again for curb gutter sidewalks, and that has been supported. Boy, we're 6, 7, 8 years down in your ward, Councilman Applegate, so that's going to continue. We're going to be able to update down there. We also had a little legal movement on our Indiana crossing. So we did receive back some legal questions to Troy. He's going to work on those, turn them around pretty quickly. He already has. We're going to also make some phone calls back to their attorney and try to keep this momentum.
Are you talking about the railroad?
That's from the railroad, yes, on the Indiana crossing.
Yay, okay,
So
good.
any movement is good movement. So that's all I've got. Thank you.
Scott, Todd, just remind people when they're going to the dump, cover their load.
Cover your load, because when
Cover
you
your
get there,
load.
you won't like it.
I'm sorry, landfill, thank you for correcting.
Engineered landfill.
Engineered
Yes,
landfill.
yes.
Engineered landfill.
Councilman
okay.
Hinton, I'm going to get that one day. I'm going to get it.
All right, and they've done us the honor of naming it the Fountain Engineered Landfill, right? Yes, okay.
Nothing for me, Mayor.
I deferred my time to Mr. Evans, nothing from me.
Thank you, Chief.
Welcome.
I feel like I've talked enough tonight.
It was the Christie show tonight, wasn't it? Yeah, yeah. Mr. Blankenship.
I've been up since 2 a.m. this morning. I'm ready to go to bed.
All right. From IT?
Nothing from us this evening, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
I really appreciate your assistance tonight, and it's way easier to run a meeting up here without all the stuff where I can spread out. So, and with Mr. Hinton poking me over.
Thank you. I appreciate the feedback. We got some good information tonight that'll help us kind of put some polish on this, and moving forward, we'll have some more process improvements to make this even smoother, hopefully.
All right, Ms. Huffman.
Nothing from me, but I will announce executive session here in just a moment when you're ready.
Oh, thanks. Okay. You can all vote no on that, you know. Okay. Ms. Duncan.
Okay, I'll be short. The watershed, I am on the Watershed Finance Committee, and then we're looking for a CPA. So our tax season has delayed that a little bit, so just want to report that. So we are meeting weekly. We're getting ready to have another meeting on Friday. We have several meetings on Friday with that. So I also want to, with our Fountain Youth Council, we have Michael Madrid Jr., and I just want to send him a shout out, not only just to report that we have a Fountain Youth, but, you know, they are youth, they are out there in the community, and he was chosen to attend the Junior Day with Princeton football. So that's a huge honor. So I just want, Michael, if you're listening, we talked earlier, and to let them know that we are appreciative of their hard work and what they're doing out in the community and what they're doing in their school. So this is a big deal, because this showcase is designed for high school football players that want to work directly with the college coaches on the field. So this was a really huge deal for him, and just shout out to Michael. And I think that's all I have. It's late, and that's all I have.
Thank you. Mr. Applegate.
I got nothing tonight.
Councilmember Estes.
I just want to give a big shout out of condolences to the loss of Officer Jinks last night. And it was a hard hit. but we appreciate his service.
Mr. Corey,
Nothing at this time, Mayor Thompson.
Councilmember Hinton.
Yes, I just want to give a shout out. I had the privilege and the honor to go and tour our schools with our SRO, those young men and women. They are some great character individuals. I am honored to be in their presence, and it really humbles me that when I send my son out of my house and my safety, and when he goes to school, that they have people that protect him and that he can get home in safety. And so I appreciate their service and all that they do. I'm sure I would name them by name, but they're so humble, they would not want that. But Chief, please let them know that I appreciate all that they do, and all your department, not only the police, but fire, and all our specialty services here in Fountain. Also, I had the opportunity to attend the ribbon tying ceremony for Underline. It was a good event, very good. I think it's a great opportunity here in Fountain to have a fiber company to be able to come in and to do that for us. It's been a long time coming because I don't have fiber. I'm dealing with a basic internet, and so it's difficult at times when you got a son who's a gamer and you're trying to do work as well. So I appreciate them coming in and making that work. So that's all I have.
That was a great event, and that was an interesting act to try to tie a ribbon. But a great shout out to Peaks and Pines for allowing us to use their facility for that event. So that made it even more community minded. So thank you for coming to that. I'm on 2 or 3 various legislative committees, and everybody hang on tight for the next month. The bills are going to drop fast and furious now that the budget is out. And I'd like to talk about one bill tonight, House Bill 22-1362. This has not been sent to committee yet. They want to adopt standards in the area of building constructions that they're not written yet, but they want you to adopt the bill. For when these codes get written in the future, you already have them adopted, so you don't have to keep going back. Adopt. They want you to adopt standards that are not written. So like 2025 standards, they want you to, approve them today ahead of time. I believe this is a local control issue. It's an unfunded mandate. It's going to have great cost to consumers. And this is all under greenhouse, green building stuff. They're working towards all electric homes at the same times we're getting rid of our coal-powered plants. I had a friend in the 60s that bought, I was too young, I'm not that old, folks, but they bought an all-electric house in the 60s. Horrible to maintain. And then electric rates went up and they couldn't even hardly afford to cook in their house. It got to the point where, just cheaper to eat out than buy a new stove and use your electricity. And I think we all saw what happened in Texas. And it's not and it doesn't address affordable housing or attainable housing, as we kind of referred to tonight. It's going to add extensive cost to it. So if you could take a moment, research House Bill 22-1362, write your representatives and senators and let them know your opinion on it. But I think our approach really, really needs to be on this. We do not need a state board of standards. We don't need the state telling us what to do. We have a very effective regional building department down here that has concerns about this bill, and so do our county commissioners. And don't talk about affordable housing out of one side of your mouth and then tell us all the restrictions you're going to put and the things you're going to force to make it be affordable. So please take some time and research that bill. I did write a letter this week with Scott's help to the governor about our concerns with the union bill that is potentially coming down that would have all county and school districts have to be part of a union. The cost, the county said just to process that would cost them about $6 million a year the first year, just to process it all, and the costs are going to go up from there. That's costs out of your pocket that we can't build roads, the county can't fix potholes, they can't keep your parks up nice. That is, again, a local control issue. The bill doesn't have a number yet, but it's being expected to drop this week. We need to keep our local dollars local for what the projects that we need to do, and I think those are what the 2 ballot measures are that we were talking about tonight, is keeping our local dollars local and doing projects within our own communities. Really excited about our 2 new SROs, and great to see them on board. Chief Heber and I went up to Denver and met with a a representative from the northern part of the state, and we were bragging on our SROs and our beacon projects, and I could tell he was very envious of what we got going on down here, and it's so exciting to be able to go up there and brag about what the great things we got going on down here in Fountain. So it's been a long meeting tonight. Appreciate everybody's patience, but unless anybody has something they forgot, please add on. Ms. Sylvia, I think you're up.
Thank you. I would like to request an executive session pursuant to CRS Section 24-6-424 for the purpose of review, approval, and amendment of executive session minutes, and 2 executive sessions pursuant to CRS Section 24-6-424B for the purpose of receiving legal advice on specific legal questions.
All right. Do we have someone make a motion? Councilmember Estes.
I move we go into executive session. Let's get it over with.
Second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Please vote. We're getting there.
Hey, Paul? Yes. I don't have a voting option for our executive session.
Okay, it looks like there might be a problem with the agenda file that was put in. We may have to do voice vote for that.
Okay, we'll go ahead and do a voice vote on it. Mayor Thompson, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Estes?
Actually, I see what happened. We haven't advanced to that agenda item.
Got it.
Okay, now we're good.
Okay. Please vote. Councilmember Rick, how do you vote? Councilmember Rick, can you hear me?
I'm showing signs of audio, but no sound coming through from Councilmember Rick.
Mayor, if you would like to move forward with the 6 yes vote, 1 abstain vote, you can move forward.
Yes, that's fine. Maybe we can reconnect with him.
6 yes, 1 abstain, motion carried.
I got reconnected. I vote yes.
Yes. 7 yes, motion carried.
7 yes? You better read it.
Oh, my God.
There you go. 1 no.
5 yes, oh. Well, mine came up entitled to vote 6 and 1. I apologize, 5 yes.
6 yes.
Okay, can we just please revote?
We should be able to.
Yes, all we need to do, Sylvia, is restart the vote on that same agenda item.
Please revote.
And Councilmember Rick?
Councilmember Rick, how do you
Yes.
vote?
Councilmember Rick, we're
votes yes.
revoting.
Councilmember Rick votes yes.
Thank you.
6 yes, 1 no. Councilmember Applegate voting no. Motion carried.
Okay, thank you. All right, y'all can leave the room or stay or whatever we're doing. I don't know who's supposed to be here and who's not, but.
Okay, we'll need a minute to bring the streams down, Madam Mayor.
Yeah.
Are we adjourned, Mayor Thompson?